Welcome. I am your host, Manpreet, aka MMA Lock of the Night, and your boy on social media at MMA LOTN, joined by my guy, Cody Saftic. You guys can follow him at CJ Saftic on Twitter. And we are here propping you up for UFC Austin, headlined by a featherweight bout between Kattar and Emmett. Very good fight there. Very interested to see how Kattar bounces from that or uses the momentum from the Giga Chikadze fight and tries to propel forward. And then on the flip side with Emmett, that guy's been begging for respect for a long time now. So this is a prime spot for him to go out there and showcase to us that he deserves that top spot. But Cody, feels like forever since we've spoken to one another. Always happy to see your face. Always happy to talk fights with you. Not at the normal time that we're usually doing on Thursdays. I'm flying out tomorrow morning, but glad that we can still make this happen on a Wednesday night. How are you doing, brother?
Yeah, good. And Canadian summer is still pretty light outside, so don't feel like 9 o'clock. But yeah, it doesn't matter. Showtime. Always happy to be talking fights with you. And now I know it feels like time flies so damn fast, or I guess so damn slow. But you miss a card, they have a week off, and then last week you got married. Congratulations. So a little bit busy, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh man, it feels like I haven't talked to you in a while. But this is a low key, kind of a tasty card. Like there's some really fun fights on the card. Not only that, but it is chalk heavy, but there's a couple spots that you do feel good about. There's a couple props you do feel good about. And right when you get that little tingling sensation in the bottom of your stomach where you're like, I like this card. It's like, ooh, it's in Texas. So how is the commission going to try to screw me over? That is the $1 million question. And hopefully you and I can figure that one out together.
Yeah, I'm thinking just off the top of my head, I think we might have more fights that finish inside the distance. So hopefully that pays off for us. But we shall see how it all goes down. First thing we want to do, though, is obviously say thank you to Bet Online, who's obviously sponsoring the show here. Make sure you guys check out the link in the description below. They will match your initial deposit 50% up to $1,000. So make sure you guys take full advantage of that because we all know Bet Online, probably one of the best out there in terms of getting early lines and betting on regional MMA as well. And then on the flip side, Cloudbet as well, working very good with us in tandem. They've been putting together a lot of great props for you guys just based off this show. We have a couple we'll share with you later on, but I do want to take this opportunity to go right into how the special props did for the last event for UFC 275. So me and Cody obviously were not able to break it down, but I still want to show you guys how those props ended up shaking out. So Glover Teixeira takedowns, we had over under 2.5. The over hits over 2.5. He ends up hitting 5 takedowns that night, plus 120. I bet a lot of people didn't expect that fight to go as long as it did, though. So I understand why that line was only at 2.5. Second, we had the and new parlay, which was Prochazka and Santos to both win. That does not hit. So it goes to a minus 1,000 for them to not both win. And still parlay Shevchenko and Teixeira. Obviously, they split it as well. If you bet the no, it was minus 286. And then two more things here. We have the Fight of the Night award, what actually went to the main event, which was plus 900 to win on Teixeira and Prochazka. I think I would have put a little bit of coin on that as well had I seen that line there. And then lastly here for Team China, they had 2 of the 3 fighters actually win there with the Zhang and Mahashate. I know Cody lost on that one and had to do a shoey bet earlier today.
I don't know what the hell kind of beer that was, too. It was rank, man. It tasted like red wine. It was beer, but it was rank.
Well, he got it done because Mahashate got the knockout victory over Steve Garcia. That cashes for plus 165. And I did forget, there are a couple more that we didn't go over here. There were 2 actually here for total takedowns and total stoppages on the full card. Unfortunately, it ended up being null because it says only for 12 bouts. If you guys remember, Bontarine missed weight. That fight got scrapped. So, yeah, those 2 props were null. We did have fastest finish on the full card, on the main card. It was Jack Della Maddalena at plus 1,200. He dispatches of Ramazan Ameev a lot easier than most people expected, but that's a cash right there. And then lastly, fastest finish on the entire card. There were a couple 1-minute finishes on this card, but it was ultimately, sorry, Cody, Mahashate who catches at plus 2,300 if you had chosen him to win that fight. And the fastest on the card, that's what you would have cashed. So once again, shout out to Cloudbet. Link is in the description below. They do a great job with partnering with us and making these props for you guys. So make sure you guys check them out and let them know that we sent you. All right, Cody. Let's not waste any more time. We got 14 fights to get through here. So let's start off at the bottom here. According to Topology, the first fight of the night is a middleweight scrap between Phil Hawes and Deron Winn. In terms of odds, we got minus 260 now for Phil Hawes and plus 220 the return on Deron Winn. This was a fight, scheduled a couple times over the last several months. It kept falling out. And now here we're hopefully, knock on wood, it's still Wednesday of fight week. Hopefully we still get it this Saturday. Off the top, Cody, like I don't know if I can trust Phil Hawes at that minus 260 line, right? He's a very inconsistent fighter. Some days he shows great improvements, like the Nasruddin Imavov fight and even the Daukaus fights, and then he gets knocked out cold by a guy, Chris Curtis, in his last fight there as well. Drawn Winn, credentially speaking, if I'm not mistaken, you can correct me on this if I'm wrong, Cody, is the better wrestler, right? On paper, Drawn Winn has more accolades essentially, and that's probably going to be his advantage here. But Phil Hawes is a very difficult guy to take down. So I'll be interested to see how Drawn Winn decides to approach this. I'm expecting we're going to see some, heavy leather being thrown during this fight. It depends on who ends up knocking out who first, essentially. Or is this going to be one of those spots where we get them pushing each other up against the cage and they try to slow it down and try to just win by control time or by position? Like I said earlier, I can't back Phil Hawes at heavy chalk. I don't mind the small poke on Drawn Winn, no pun intended there, but I still believe that he can make this a lot closer than the odds suggest. If I were to force to bet here, it would probably be the Drawn Winn side, but in terms of actual props, Winn by decision plus 400, not too shabby, and on the other side, Hawes by decision plus 200. I feel like that's how it might turn out. People see these types of fights and think, oh, somebody's going to get knocked out, but knowing their styles and how Phil Hawes has been trying to elevate his game or improve his game, and a lot of it is set on not emptying the gas tank early, using your wrestling, using your grappling, and try to slow down the fight. So maybe the overs and a decision prop on either side is kind of what I'm leaning. What about you? Am I off on this read here? We've broken down this fight a couple times now, right? How do you ultimately feel about it now?
Yeah, we've broken down a couple times. Honestly, they're both NJCAA national champions. So they're both junior college national champions. And then Phil Hawes transferred over to University of Iowa, which is a D1 program, whereas Drawn Winn went to go out on like USA, like the national team. And that's where he probably had his best success as a wrestler. But at 5'6", he's just like so stumpy of a man that it hasn't translated over to MMA. I know what you're saying. Maybe they're just going to throw leather, but Phil Hawes, he's got big dynamite power, but I think he's starting to get a little tentative to throw it because he doesn't want to gas out. And Drawn Winn, he doesn't really show nothing in the way of knockouts. Keep in mind that this is a guy that went the full 15 minutes with Eric Spicely and Tom Lawler and hit them both plenty, just doesn't have the stinging pop in his hands. Here's the biggest question mark about this fight. Look at Drawn Winn's career, right? Debut, 203 pounds. Devin Fisher, 191 pounds. Cody Sans, 205 pounds. Ahmed White, 192. Tom Lawler, 205. Eric Spicely, 185. Looks like shit. First time making middleweight. Doesn't look good. 3-1 favorite over Eric Spicely, but really was a letdown that night. Got the win, but didn't look good, okay? Next fight against Darren Stewart, misses weight, 188.5. Can't make the middleweight limit. Short little stubby guy, but he's fought as high as 205. His walk around weight's 213. He has an entire career of cutting weight. He's getting a little older now. Don't think he cuts it the same. So he misses weight, and you remember that fight. He looks like crap, right? He tires out. He ends up getting finished. Jeremy Mearshart, he makes the weight. What happens when he makes 185 on the dot? He ends up tiring, takes too much on his body. He has a decent enough first round, but not great. Second round, he gets hurt to the body. Third round, he gets put away and rear naked choked. So bad performances when he's making that 85 limit. Tapology shows he wrestled Colin Moore, again, at his walk-around weight of 213 pounds. And then his last fight against Antonio Arroyo, he looked a lot better, right? But it's a catch weight of 195 pounds. The UFC tailor makes it for him. Arroyo's short notice, comes in, gives up 12 takedowns. But it's not like Drawn Winn has any top control. He can just get the takedowns. Same thing with the Darren Stewart fight. He got 6 takedowns. Unfortunately, 6 for 15 against Darren Stewart, not cutting it. And when he does get the takedowns, he can't do nothing with it. The way that the new judging criteria is, if you're just getting takedowns and you're just getting a little control, but you're not actually doing any damage, they're not scoring it. And if you watch that Drawn Winn fight and look at the fight metric numbers as well, he lands 20 significant strikes over the course of 15 minutes. No ground and pound, no real stand-up. He can just take you down, you get back up, and he takes you down again. It's not pretty. It's effective at a low level, but eventually you're going to run into your match. I think Hawes' wrestling is the best of anybody that Drawn Winn's fought in the UFC so far, so it's not crazy to think that Hawes is going to stuff a few of these takedowns. As far as the stand-up goes, like I feel like it's a little bit better. Hard to believe that this would play out strictly as a kickboxing match, but again, Hawes is a little more explosive. I think he's got I don't know if it's a 5-inch reach advantage. I forget exactly what the numbers are on it, but he's going to be a little bit bigger, a little bit longer, and he's just got to make sure he doesn't get gassed out having a straight up wrestling match. But I really think you got to wait until the weigh-ins to see what Cerrone Winn looks like. If he makes the weight, what kind of shape he's in. Could be a good live betting fight. But to be honest with you, I think the best prop here is that over 2.5, which is about even money. I think it covers it from a number of angles. If Phil Hawes wins, Cerrone Winn is difficult to put away. He can get put away, as you saw in, say, the Jarrett Mearshart fight, but you're going to have to take him into those deeper waters. And Phil Hawes is not exactly a cardio machine himself, so probably becomes a slow bog of a wrestling match with Phil Hawes landing a few more better strikes and then ultimately him getting the decision. But I think the best props at even money, over 2.5.
I like it. And in regards to the metrics here, the disadvantage that Cerrone Winn's going to be at, it's 5 inches in terms of height, 7 inches in terms of reach. So
and it's a big cage. It's a
like
fight night card, but it's not in the apex, right? So it's a full-size cage. And just when have you watched Cerrone Winn in the UFC and been like, damn, not bad? Like, I had him bet over Arroyo, but it was awful, dude. It was some awful stuff. And then for the record, since the Arroyo fight, since all this weight mishaps, all this, you're right. They booked the Phil Hawes fight the first time around, and he pulls out with a rib injury. So they rebook it 3 months later, and he pulls out again. Now they've rebooked it again, and he's got to make 185. I don't know, man. He's 33 years old, and I would say that the weight cuts have taken their toll. He's probably better suited at 205, but can you name one other 5'6", 205er? No, I can't, and I know I can name you a lot of fighters. It's just not a weight class for him, so he's forced to zap himself down. In fact, 195 is best for him. Rich Franklin weight. Fight at 195 would be great. Unfortunately, it doesn't exist, and I think he's doing himself a great disservice by trying to get down to middleweight.
There we go. I'm just happy that we don't have to talk about this fight anymore. I mean, let's get it over with. Third time we've pretty much talked about it. Let's get it over with, and we'll finally see if Phil Hawes is worth the chalk, as some people believe. We'll see how it goes down. All right, let's move on to the next one here. Another middleweight scrap. We got Daukaus going up against Roman Dolidze in terms of odds, minus 255 on Daukaus, plus 215 on Roman Dolidze. Again, Daukaus, Hawes, there's a couple other guys on the rest of this card that are always like that minus 200 to minus 280 range whenever they fight a certain level of guys. And this is a classic example of another one where Dolidze, we're still trying to figuring out what we're getting with the guy, right? Like, his bread and butter has got to be like getting guys to the ground, controlling them, using his jiu-jitsu, asking his coach if he wants to submit him now or not, like the stupid shit like that,
and
right?
Falling back on a leg lock,
and then falling back, giving up
move.
position,
Yes.
like not good fight IQ at all, especially when you're not able to get the finish after that. And then on the flip side with Daukaus, I love everything that kid does, man. He has a developing striking. Obviously, his bread and butter is his ground game as well. He's very long. He does well in the clinch area, being able to just smother his opponents and then trip them or drag them to the ground. And I think he should be able to implement that pressure here pretty well against Roman Dolidze. Do I believe he should be a minus 255? I have a little bit of issue with that, but I would rather play his prop here. Like Dolidze, very difficult to put away. The guy's durable. He has a heart like a champion in terms of not giving up on certain spots or not tapping out to certain submission attempts. I'd be surprised if Daukaus locks him up in anything here to give him any trouble, but I do think he'll land significant strikes from dominant positions, dragging the fight to the ground and just kind of controlling him there. And I think he can hold his own in the striking, because the striking, I think, is just Dolidze, power shots. He doesn't, there's no combinations with the man. You know what I mean? He's just trying to take your head off, essentially. If Daukaus can use that against him, parlay it into takedowns, I think this is his fight to win. So give me Daukaus, give me the overs as well. Let me get the actual numbers here for you guys. The over 2.5, minus 150. I don't mind that. Fight goes to decision, minus 120. Sign me up for that. And then Daukaus by decision, plus 150. I don't mind it. What are your thoughts here? You got more love for Dolidze, or am I just shitting on him the perfect amount?
Yeah, no, I would shit on him the exact same amount. He's actually got a lot of parallels almost to a Cerrone Winn. Is like the guy actually starts his career as a heavyweight, right? Like he's fighting up to 265, but let's see a recorded weight. Well, he's at heavyweight. Then he goes to light heavyweight, and then he makes his UFC debut against Kattar 205. Looks pretty good. Kattar is terrible. Well, actually, it's only like a 6-fight winning streak since he got cut. It's so whack. But he beats Kattar at 205. He actually doesn't look terrible. The John Allen fight, not a great fight, but again, at 205 pounds, he doesn't look terrible. And then for whatever reason, he decides, I'm going to drop down 20 pounds down to 185. Now, it's not, if you jump from lightweight to featherweight, you jump from a lot of these weight classes, it's a 10-pound jump. featherweight to bantamweight, bantamweight to flyweight. He's essentially dropping 2 weight classes, making that 205 to 185 drop. The result is one of the worst fights you've ever seen in your life against Trevin Giles, where he has almost no success. His wrestling's really not all that good. His grappling's really not all that good. His striking's really not all that good. There's not a whole lot that he does well. Again, when you look at the numbers, they're just so goddamn low. He lands 32 significant strikes over the course of 15 minutes. Then the Leonis Dorapoli fight, he landed 14 significant strikes over the course of 15 minutes. And to boot, he got taken down 3 times by Leonis Dorapoli. Undersized welterweight who is jumping up to middleweight to fight a guy that made his debut at heavyweight. Does any of this make sense? No, but Dolide's not that good. So I don't really know what element of his game I particularly like, but with Kyle Daukaus, BJJ black belt, his brother's obviously a good serviceable heavyweight, and I really think Daukaus is making a lot of improvements to his own striking. You saw him in the Kevin Holland fight, looked a lot more comfortable, looked a lot more improved. The Phil Hawes fight, yes, he lost that fight, but his wrestling, his takedown defense looked much better. You know, his ability to thwart off all like real damage off the ground was good. Defensively, very sound. I think he's growing comfortable. His only other loss in the UFC is that Brandon Allen fight. Takes it on short notice. Wins the 3rd round against Brandon Allen. Never quit in that fight. Kept coming. I think there's a lot that you can like about him. And that last fight with Jamie Pickett, it's much of the same. You know, his striking looked much improved. His footwork looks good. His speed looks good. And he becomes the first man to choke out Jamie Pickett when he snaps him up with the Darce. For the record, Jamie Pickett had actually won 2 straight going into that fight and was doing pretty good at just like holding guys up against the cage and controlling them physically. But you can see Daukaus is strong. He's explosive. He was well on his way to winning the Kevin Holland fight before the unfortunate no contest due to a headbutt. Like, I get it, but he did choke the guy out. And I don't know how you turn that back to a no contest. Cost me a lot of money that night. Anyways, not here to argue it. I like Kyle Daukaus. I like what he brings to the table, and I think that this is a good spot for him. So when you're looking at some of the big favorites on the card, which ones are potential apple pie shares, which one do you actually like? I like Daukaus because 2 reasons. Dolidze's style of potentially getting takedowns but scoring no ground and pound, right? Not scoring anything really meaningful. They're not scoring that these days. You see it on every single card. It's like the real question is, did Malkoun beat Allen? Did he do enough with the takedowns? Did Holly win that fight? Did you do enough control? Did Eric Anders win that fight with enough control against the cage? But the judges are not reacting to it. They want to see damage. They want to see a little bit more. And second of all, it's Texas. And as bad of a commission as it is, I would think that they're looking for a little more violence, right? I would think that they're looking for a little more, you don't necessarily you just have the big moments in the rounds, right? The big moments. I don't think the big moments are going to be coming from Roman Dolidze. So sign me up for Daukaus. The prop that I like here is that Daukaus by decision, which you can have about plus 140, plus 150. I think Dolidze's BJJ is good enough that he's not going to get submitted. I think his chin is good enough that he should be able to take his shots. But, Daukaus could, if he comes out as like a good progressive, getting better, 28 years old, still making improvements, maybe he finishes him late. But I got a feeling that Roman Dolidze is still tough enough, Georgian strong, BJJ black belt, like enough to just hopefully stay out of harm's way and just lose a decision quietly.
Yeah, it will be interesting to see who is able to establish that grappling success. But given everything that you just laid out, man, it's tough to go against Daukaus in this spot. I get why he's a big favorite. Let's see if he can deliver come Saturday night. All right, let's move on to the next fight here. We're looking at Cody Stamann going up against Eddie Wineland. In terms of odds, heavy chalk on Cody Stamann, minus 550, plus 385 the return on Eddie Wineland. Very weird fight, right? Actually, any fight Eddie Wineland fights at this point in his career is a weird fight to me. Like, I'm still surprised that he's going out there and fighting. I remember going back and watching UFC 128 live in New Jersey when he took on Uriah Faber in the co-main event of that John Jones Shogun Hua card. And he's still here, he's still doing the damn thing, but hasn't really been going the greatest for him in terms of, parlaying enough wins together here. Like in his last 5 fights, he's 1-4, right? He had that knockout victory over Gregory Popov, sandwich in the middle there, but he's coming off a knockout loss to Sean O'Malley, a knockout loss to John Castaneda, and, Cody Stamann, not much of a knockout puncher, so I don't think he has to worry too much about that. But he's going to have to worry about like a relentless grappling style, not to mention his karate style from the outside where he likes to use his kicks a lot, reminiscent of his former stablemate, Mr. Darren Cruikshank. They always, have that type of karate style from the outside, but they actually have wrestling capabilities as well. And Cody Stamann, definitely one of the better wrestlers in this spot, which is why I thought he would give Said Nurmagomedov some issues last time around. Said's like, nah, dog, you forgot who I am? and then he finishes Cody Stamann. I believe that was 47 seconds. I believe he hurt him, and then he just jumped on the guillotine choke and then got him out of there. So good win for Saeed, but tough loss for Cody Stamann. That's the third in a row now that he has in terms of losses, dating back to July of 2020, where he lost to Jimmy Rivera. Then he took a year and a half off, lost to Merab, and then lost to Saeed. Those are not bad names to lose to, right? Like, it's not like he's going out there and losing to a fringe top 20 guy. He's losing to solid guys in that top 15, top 20 area. Now this is more so of a cupcake layup for him. Hopefully that's where he's expecting it to be. Do I trust him at minus 500? Yeah. Actually, I do. I think he'll be able to stay safe here. Eddie Wineland, he's tricky with his power and how he's able to, let it go. But I just don't think he's going to be able to catch Cody here with anything. I think we'll see Cody push him up against the cage if he needs to, drag him to the ground, just grind this fight out, get that dub, right? At the end of the day, it's all about getting that dub. He's been walking home with half of his paychecks over his last 3 fights. But I think here he should be able to scrape out the victory here. And in terms of props, like, can you go with anything other than Cody Stamann via decision, right? Let's see what that line is currently looking like. They don't
minus 130.
Minus 130, right? Like that's the way to play him essentially, because historically speaking, that's how he wins. But we'll see. Maybe Eddie Wineland's chin is really starting to deteriorate. One of those big shots from Cody Stamann could really change the way this fight's going. Maybe he gets the knockout victory, but if we're going off of stats, if we're going off of history, you got to go with Stamann by decision. So that's where I'm going. What about yourself here?
Yeah, okay. So feeling much of the same. Cody Stamann by decision at minus 130. But when you say, well, Cody Stamann is really not knocking out guys, it's like, yeah, all right. Well, because he's fighting Said Nurmagomedov and Rodrigues, Jimmy Rivera, Brian Keller, Song Yadong, a fight he should have won, by the way. Aljamain Sterling, Brian Caraway. Man, these are good guys. He's not knocking them. For the record, Terrion Ware is cast iron, right? Yeah. Tom Duquesnoy was supposed to be the shit once upon a time. Never really fanned out. Kid. Yeah, the Fireball Kid, man. He was I remember I used to watch him in Bama. He legitimately looked good. But French Muay Thai doesn't really translate in the octagon, apparently. Cody Stamann's done nothing but fight the best guys available to him. He's fought at 135 and 145. He's actually done fairly decent at 145 pounds. There's a lot that you can like about him. And so to say he's not a power puncher, fair, because he really isn't, but maybe unfair in that he's been fighting guys that are not likely to get knocked out by actual power punchers, let alone, a mediocre guy. When you look at Eddie Wineland, he fights very defensively irresponsibly. Both of his hands are just way down at his side, and he relies solely on the basis of his reflexes getting his head out of the way. It used to work back in the day because he was quick and he was agile. And on top of that, because his hands are so low, Eddie Wineland is very difficult to take down. He's got very solid takedown defense. But the older he's got, the reflexes aren't there anymore. The speed's not there anymore. The agility's not there anymore. And these guys are just beating him with a punch and knocking him out. His last 2 fights are great indicators of that. Knocked out in the first round. John Castaneda has some power, right? But to just melt him in the first round like that is certainly a bad sign. And the Sean O'Malley one, very interesting. Because O'Malley doesn't really load up on any one punch like you saw in the Chris Moutinho fight. He just kind of touch, goes, touch, go. The reason why everyone thought, geez, Moutinho's got one hell of a chin, and then gets absolutely sparked out there by Guido Canetti in the first round in his next fight. So there are certain levels to it. But you see with Eddie, it's not necessarily a super hard punch as much as its accuracy. You just hit him right on the button. Because his hands are right down by his side, he's not defending himself. Those shots become a lot more easy to pick up on. So I feel like Stamann's a little bit too fast, a little bit too agile, probably does beat him with a punch. And if you're going to crack him clean in the face, he's 39 years old. He's coming off back-to-back first-round knockout losses. Yeah, it's going to be a problem. Now, I understand what the UFC is doing. They've got a 31, 32-year-old Cody Stamann who is a company guy, okay? They say, hey, dude, do you want to fight? Okay, think about this, right? Man, we got this killer from France. They say Tom Duquesnoy is the real deal, right? Cody Stamann's a plus 150 underdog against him. But he takes it because he wants the tough fight. He rebounds from that by fighting Brian Caraway. Brian Caraway's a perennial top 5, top 10 guy. Beats Brian Caraway. He takes the Aljamain Sterling fight. He took Song Yadong when nobody wanted that fight. He took Jimmy Rivera. He took Murad Dvalishvili. He did Said Nurmagomedov. As a company, trust me, I'm matchmaking. As a matchmaker, as a company, when you've got a guy that's got his hand up, that's like, I'll take whatever you give me. I want to fight the toughest guys, doesn't turn them down, shows up, makes weight, fights his heart out. Those are the guys you want to keep around. They're trying to reward him. They want to get him back on track. He needs a win. And so they're giving him a 39-year-old Eddie Wineland. And for Eddie Eddie's a former WEC champ. Eddie's got a longevity. Eddie's got a reputation. They're not going to give him a murderous power puncher. They're going to give him somebody who on paper is not really going out there and dicing fools. So it kind of makes sense on both ends. But I think only one guy's going to go forward in their career, and the UFC knows that, and it's the guy that's 10 years younger. So I really do think he's going to get the job done now. I always talk about, oh, you beat guys, but the guys are no longer with the promotion. And in Eddie Wineland's case, so Gregory Popov just got knocked down in 26 seconds. But outside of him, these are the rest of his wins. Takema Zugaki, long since retired. Frankie Science, retired. Yves Jean-Boy, retired. Brad Pickett, retired. Scott Jorgensen, retired. Ken Stone, retired. Campuzano, George Root, Manny Tapia, Wicho. Dude, there's not one single guy that hasn't been retired for like 3 to 5 years that he's defeated. Now, I know he's not super active, but it's like the wins are just, he's from a different era, really. He really is. Yeah. And I think that competing at this level in this day and age is going to be a problem. So, listen, I don't have to tell you any new information. Cody Stamann's a 550 favorite, 5-1 favorite. We all agree about the fact that he should win. It's you and I are trying to figure out what's the juiciest prop, what's the best way to attack it. You're saying Stamann by decision, and I largely do agree, but like a little sinking feeling at the bottom of my stomach that it's like, it's MMA, 4-ounce gloves. If he touches Eddie Wineland clean on the chin, he's going to topple him over. And I don't know that I would want like a ton of investment on that Cody Stamann by decision just because, recency bias.
Eddie Wineland, I believe the first fight that he has on the Zuffa record, which dates back to his WEC days, May 5th, 2006. It was WEC where he knocks out Antonio Benuelos in the first round.
Benuelos,
so not really going good for the Cinco de Mayhem fighters that were going out there and fighting. But I even looked through his UFC career. 15 UFC fights, only been taken down 3 times, and 2 of those was by Uriah Faber in his UFC debut. So very difficult to take down to what Cody was talking about. 86% takedown defense, I believe, is what it is as well. So Eddie Wineland will definitely make you fight for your money there and have to keep it on the feet. We'll see if Cody Stamann can implement his wrestling here. All right, let us move on to the next fight here. We got Dani Chavez going up against Ricardo Ramos in the featherweight division. In terms of odds, we're currently looking at minus 300 for Ricardo Ramos, plus 250 the return on Dani Chavez. And it's interesting to see Dani Chavez back down to, plus 200 numbers after everybody was pretty high on him after that victory over TJ Brown. Even comes in as the favorite against Jared Gordon, if I'm not mistaken. But Kai Kamaka fight, very interesting fight there in terms of, it looked like Kai Kamaka was in control of that fight for the majority of it, right? He was kind of walking him down, using combinations, whereas Dani Chavez was just looking for those big shots to try to get him out of there. Ultimately, Kai Kamaka does lose a point, I believe, in the second round, which forces that fight to go to a draw. But I feel like this might look like the Kamaka fight, maybe worse, because I think Ramos is maybe a better striker than Kamaka, and he could probably put it on better on Dani Chavez. Chavez, it seems like he needs that calf kick to find any victory, right? That's how he was able to dispatch of TJ Brown, use that calf kick and really slowed him down and just opened up with his hands after that. Wasn't able to do it against Jared Gordon because he was cracking to the pressure of Gordon. Ramos, I could see him picking him apart from outside. I could even see him trying to mix it up with his jiu-jitsu, take this fight to the ground. But I completely understand why Ricardo Ramos is a big favorite in this spot. I don't mind parlaying him, but in terms of picking a prop just for that one spot, Chavez, tough to put away. Ramos, he's a wild man. He'll fight. How much by TKO is plus 800? I don't know about that. Maybe a Ramos sub plus 400 or a Ramos by decision minus 130. I would entertain a possible finish here from Ramos, but let me know what your thoughts are here. What do you think about this fight?
Yeah, I think Ramos by decision. Like Dani Chavez, pretty limited, but he seems durable enough. His takedown defense, not that bad. Like I know it's an aspect of his game that he worked a lot on, and in the TJ Brown fight, it helped that he completely blew out TJ's first front leg before TJ even tried to wrestle him. But again, I think that there's something that you could actually not terrible about his takedown defense. The striking, he's got the low calf kick. That's good. He winds up on big punches, I mean, at times it potentially could be good. But 2 serious problems. One, the volume's just not there for him. He waits way too long to see what his opponent's going to do. Against Jared Gordon, it's a terrible way of fighting because Jared Gordon's a bit of a volume guy. He likes to push a pace, likes to get up pressure. And in that fight, again, he gets outstruck like 82-39, right? So he gets almost tripled up on the striking numbers. Doesn't look particularly good. And then in the Kamaka fight, if you go on MMA decisions, of the 14 media members, 2 of them had it a draw. 12 of them scored at 30-27 for Kamaka, with a point deduction, making it a 29-27, 12 of them, right? Kai Kamaka did outstrike him. He landed the bigger shots. It didn't look like Chavez really all that interested. He looked extremely limited and vulnerable to me. I didn't think it was a good performance. And he was second round low blow, gives it a point deduction. He was able to scrape by a draw. It hasn't been particularly all that good for him. I think Ramos, younger, faster, way longer, 5-inch reach advantage. Again, they're going to be in the big cage. I think he's going to fight effectively from the outside and just put up some volume. He might be able to drag the fight to the ground. Getting a clean takedown is going to be difficult, but he might be able to backpack him up against the cage, or just, get him into a compromising situation and just kind of pull him to the mat. If he does get the fight to the mat, jiu-jitsu is definitely going to give him an edge. But Chavez is tough enough. I think he's just going to be able to take the beating for the 15 minutes. I hope he doesn't land one of these big wild overhand rights, because Ramos has a tendency of standing a little upright with his head up in the air. And again, when you're tall and you're skinny like that, the leg's going to be available to get kicked as well. There are weapons that Chavez could use effectively. I just don't think he's got a volume to use them enough, right? You're going to have to throw lots of overhand rights. You're going to have to throw lots of leg kicks. I'm just not confident he's actually going to do that. So I think Ramos just goes out there, puts the volume out, paces him, and then ends up winning this thing on the scorecards. So Ramos by decision, I think it's about plus 130, minus 130.
Yeah,
that's kind of how I'm leaning with it.
Perfect. All right, let's move on to this next one here. You got a women's strawweight scrap, I should say, between Gloria De Paula versus Maria Oliveira. In terms of odds, we got some chalk on the De Paula side at minus 260, plus 220 the return on Oliveira. Now, this is the last matchup that I have yet to get to in terms of looking into Maria Oliveira. For me, it's mainly just off of a memory with the Tabitha Ricci fight, a fight where a lot of people expected Tabitha Ricci to get the quick finish there. Ultimately, it goes the full 15 minutes, and we see some decent things from what I recall. Decent striking, could have slightly better takedown defense, but Gloria De Paula is one of those women I haven't really been the highest on. I don't know, like 6-4 record, but even just watching her fight, I feel like there are spots where you can see her starting to slow down, and maybe a fighter like Maria Oliveira could take advantage of that. The Diana Belbita fight, very close, very, very close fight, especially in terms of significant strikes. I think they were only off by like 1 or 2 strikes, if I'm not mistaken. And then before that, obviously having 2 straight losses to Jinh Yu Frey and Cheyenne Bays or Cheyenne Vlismas. It was the wrestling ultimately of Jinh Yu Frey late in that fight that got her the W there. And I'm not sure if Maria Oliveira will have that advantage to be able to take her to the ground and kind of grind her out in those spots. I'm not, keen on betting this fight on either side. The goes to decision is obviously minus 325, so a heavy chalk there. I think whichever side you end up settling on, well, if you settle on the Oliveira side, you're fine with the money line. Plus 220, plus 200 is not that bad of a line. But for the De Paula side, you want to try to make some extra money off that, right? You want to go for that decision prop, which is currently sitting at minus 175 all the way down to minus 140 on certain spots that I'm seeing as well. So I'll lean the De Paula side, but I might change my pick depending on what I see from Oliveira. All I have in my head is the Tabitha Ricci fight. I need to dig deeper. I remember she fought Alyssa Garcia, one of Josh Barnett's chicks over there in Risen, and won that fight pretty handily. We'll see here. I'll go De Paula, but going decision is probably, that seems to be the spot. What are you seeing here?
Yeah, I won't waste too much time on this one. I think it's probably going the 15 minutes. Fight goes the distance is like minus 325. I think that tells you everything you need to know. It's likely going the 15 minutes. I think Gloria De Paula's got slightly better striking. She might have a little bit better output, but I do think she mixes in a takedown or two. I think that's the key. With the Diana Belbita fight, I mean, it was close in the striking numbers. She, of course, did get the one takedown in that fight as well, but it was just like those little tiny extra things that got the decision. Close decision, very competitive. But I do kind of agree that I thought she won. The prior 2 fights, again, it's decent competition. Cheyenne Vlismas is legit. Jinh Yu Frey, not all that bad. I kind of want to give her the pass in some certain spots, but she's extremely limited. And her opponent, meanwhile, Maria Oliveira, it's much of the same. To me, she looked very physically not all that strong. She got taken down 5 times by Tabitha Ricci. Your striking looked okay. I think if this is largely going to be a striking battle, that Gloria DePaulo just ever so slightly does a little bit better. Similar to the Belbita fight. Belbita was charging forward and throwing wild, but Gloria DePaulo was just, she was a lot calmer. You know, she was picking her shots a lot better. Her accuracy was a lot better. So I just think it'll be much of the same here. But I'm not super confident in either way. And of course, the way I see this fight going is it goes to decision. Oh, it's 3-1. Okay, well, I can't get anything there. Okay, well, if I did take to Paula, well, I would take her by decision. Oh, it's you're saying minus 170 to minus 140. Bum ass Bodog got me at minus 185.
Ooh.
So it's like not even a good price there either. Not a whole lot of ways to attack this. I will take Gloria DePaulo somewhere on the PRP, but you know, near the bottom.
I like it. All right, let's move on to the next one here. Another women's fight. We got Jasudavicius going up against Natalia Silva, debuting Natalia Silva, I should say. And in terms of odds, we're currently looking at minus 235 for the Canadian, plus 200 for Natalia Silva. Interesting fight here, right? Jasmine, all of a sudden, a huge favorite after being an underdog in her last fight. I believe it like a plus 200 underdog, if I'm not mistaken, against Kay Hansen. But she wins that fight largely on her size, her strength, and her ability to bully Kay Hansen in certain spots. And she takes home the decision victory there. Now she's going up against Silva, who, you know, seems like she'll have a little bit more resistance than what Kay Hansen brought to the table last time around, but still looks like she can be controlled, and pretty much goaded into the game of Jasmine here, which, heavy clinching, big takedowns, and just a lot of dominant control and dominant position from the Jasudavicius side. But Natalia Silva, you know, if she is able to retain guard, she's not that bad off of her back. She does throw up a lot of submissions. She's very offensive there. She's gotten a couple armbar victories. She's gotten a couple reversals, even with armbar spots as well. But Jasmine doesn't seem like a girl to me that will... She has gotten into submission trouble in the past, but she does a good job in terms of remaining calm and getting out of those positions. And I'm hoping that she can bring that to this fight here, because it'll, you know, serve her very well if she's able to. On the feet, you know, I don't think it's a significant advantage for either woman. Silva throws with a little bit more heat behind her hands, more bad intentions, leaving her chin out there to be touched. But Jasmine doesn't really strike me as somebody that will be able to, you know, pick up on that and counter straight down the middle and take advantage of those spots. I do think that this will largely be a grappling fight, you know, with Jasmine trying to control her on the ground. She should win this fight via decision. That's probably the prop that I would go with. But I wouldn't count out a Silva via sub armbar type of women's MMA meme stuff, if you know what I mean. And that line currently is sitting around plus 550 to plus 650 on certain spots for Silva to win by submission. Otherwise, Jasmine by decision, that's currently sitting at minus 140. That seems to be the best way for her to win. And last prop I'll drop for you guys here. I saw somebody bet it actually. It was Natalia Silva, no decision. So if she wins inside the distance, it's plus 150. But if Jasmine wins inside the distance, then you lose your bet. But if Jasmine wins by decision, it is a null bet. If Silva wins by decision, it is a null bet. So I think that's a damn good spot if you do like the Silva side here. But I'm going Jasmine, bigger, stronger, and she should be able to bully her way into the position she needs, similar to what she did in the Kay Hansen fight. What are you thinking, Cody? You agree with the Canadian spot here?
Yeah, well, I agree that I think Jasmine Jasudavicius is going to be the bigger fighter. She's got the better wrestling, and in women's MMA, it usually comes down to who's got the better wrestling. So yeah, I should probably get the takedowns, probably grind her out, probably win a decision. But the line seems a little off to me. I think Natalia Silva is like a big ass red flag, potentially trap line of some sorts. Like think about these a couple things, for example, right? First of all, she's been off for 2.5 years, so she conceivably could have made a whole lot of improvements. She's only 25 years old. So this is somebody that turns pro at 18, okay? She fights between the age of 18 until 2019. So she fought effectively for 4.5 years, okay? She fought 17 times as a pro in 4.5 years between the ages of 18 and like 22. Her last loss was Marina Rodrigues. Okay, she went the distance with Marina Rodrigues in 2017. She was 20 years old at the time. Marina Rodrigues was 30 years old at the time. This kid is like a prodigy of sorts. She wants to fight. She's competitive. She's been training from a young age. And then since the Marina Rodrigues fight, she's fought suspect competition, but she's won 6 in a row. She picked up the Jungle Fights title. It's a 4th round submission. Cardio looked good. Pace looked good. I think watching the tape on her, super green, lots of holes in her game, this and that. But the last time you saw her, she's 22. Now she's coming back 25. How many skills could she have picked up? Normally she'd fight 12 times in 3 years. Instead, she's taken that time off. So I'm almost thinking because you'll look back on footage on her and be like, oh, she does this wrong and she does that wrong. Almost 3 years later, the difference between 22 to 25, fought in decent enough competition, last loss being to Marina Rodrigues. She might be one, and we see this with Brazilians all the time. They'll leave, they'll don't look great, and then they come back, and it's like, oh my God, made a ton of improvements. She could potentially come out here and be a serious problem. She's at a Paulo Costa's gym. I don't know if that's good or bad. I don't know if she's you saw it already or this and that. Like Paul Shaughnessy mentioned, if you check it around on Instagram, like she looks in better shape than how she has in the past. But I also think that's a maturing fighter, right? The difference between 22 to 25, muscle mass, physicality, maturity, all those things are going to come. Jasudavicius, she's 32 years old. She's a slow starter in the sport. So on one hand, you got this Brazilian who's been training since she was a kid, has gotten some decent enough skills, and now is taking time away, coming back, versus Jasmine, who's still improving. 100% she's still improving. She's getting better fight to fight. But you know what? It's not as easy as women's MMA. I'm going to put one of them as a more than 2-1 favorite over this other girl because there's not enough information about her. Like these Brazilians, man, there's you can't sleep on them. So it really does feel trap line to me. But again, as cappers, we can't just go with narrative. You got to go with what you see. And what you see is Jasmine's bigger and stronger and should get the takedowns, end up on top, grind time away. But if this thing's going to go 15 minutes and one of them's getting takedowns and grinding and the other one's throwing up arm bars and landing shots standing in Texas, could be a lot greasier than you would like it to be. So as terms of a prop, I think this thing's going the full 15 minutes. I don't think you're going to get a great price tag on that. Maybe you would try to improve. Yeah, minus 160.
Sorry, I was looking at a different fight. My bad.
I'm going to hit that if it is minus 160.
minus 215.
It's minus 2. Yeah, I'm seeing minus 213.
I see minus 170 on 5 times, but yeah, RIP.
Yeah, you know what? The over 2.5 is 225, and the fight goes the distance is 215. So I would just take the over 2.5 if that was the case. But that's a pretty chalky prop, I'll admit.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to the next one here. We are pretty much at the halfway point of this 14-fight card, and it is an interesting one. Interested to hear Cody's thoughts on this one. We got Jeremiah Wells going up against Old Man. Well, I guess, is it? Can we say Old Man? I guess you can say Old Man in terms of fight years for Court McGee. Let me get his actual age here. 37 years old. Okay, I guess MMA years. Old Man Court McGee. In terms of odds, he's actually the slight favorite here. Minus 120. There's a lot of action has come in on Court McGee over the last couple of days. I believe he was a slight dog before, but now he is the slight favorite. And I think deservedly so. I already have a bet on Court McGee at plus 100. And I just love betting him in these spots, man. When he's going up against guys that are reliant on getting a finish, finishing a guy like Court McGee is very tough. The last guy to do so was 6 years ago. Santiago Ponzinibbio finishes him by punches that night. But since then, he's been able to, have that chin tested and pass the test. And he goes out there and just puts the guys through the grinder. And that's pretty much his game, man. If he's able to put a pace on you or put his hands around you and just grind you up against the fence, he's more than likely going to be successful doing so, especially a guy against, especially later against a guy like Jeremiah Wells here. Wells, we know his cardio is not the greatest. He has won, I believe, a couple decisions in his career, but it just doesn't look the greatest, especially when he goes deep into fights. Whereas Court McGee, that guy's cardio looks good, from minute 1 to minute 15. He can put a pace on guys and really just like I said, grind them and break them. I truly believe he broke Ramiz Brahimaj back in January when he put him through the grinder. It's kind of a similar opponent that he's going up to here too, right? Both guys usually round 1 or bust type of fighters. But I think Wells is obviously the better version of Ramiz Brahimaj. Also, how awesome would that fucking fight be if they put Brahimaj and Jeremiah Wells together? But in terms of here, man, I think it's going to be very difficult to tap an untappable Court McGee. I don't think he's ever tapped out in his career, if I'm not mistaken, at least professional career. And then on the flip side with McGee, the durability, the cardio edge, putting the pace on Jeremiah Wells, as long as his chin holds up, which I believe it will, he should be able to go out there and get the dub here. So the couple of props that I was looking at, even just taking him a money line, I think is a great spot here. I think you're getting a really good number on him there. But in terms of a prop, McGee by decision, that seems to usually be the way. I was thinking about the McGee round 3. He wasn't able to do it against Ramiz Brahimaj. Jeremiah Wells might be able to stay safe in certain spots and prolong this fight. So I'm not too privy to the round 3, which is plus 1,800 for McGee to win in round 3. I'm not as hot on that as I expected I'd be. But McGee by decision, like I said, plus 150. And if you want any type of hedge, Jeremiah Wells plus 450 to win in round 1, or even Wells by knockout in round 1 is plus 900. Not too bad of a head spot, but I really like the McGee side here. Like I said, took him straight up. But if I were to take a prop, it would be the via decision plus 150. What about you, Cody?
Yeah, I got the same thing. I think this is a good stylistical matchup for Court McGee. Like on one hand, I like to harp on the fact that, like you said, old man Court McGee, he's 37 years old. He's actually only 3 years older than Jeremiah Wells for the record. But here's the thing with Court McGee. He's actually not 37 years old, right? See, in 2005, motherfucker died, right?
Oh, yeah,
and so when he came back, he's actually reborn.
So
that's about 15 years ago. So he's probably about 15. His and now people will say that, well, that's stupid. It wasn't like he came back as a baby. Well, he had to relearn how to walk and talk. So you go ahead and tell me. He's just an ageless wonder now, dude. He's like Matt Brown, who, by the way, also fucking died of a drug overdose. And now you see him into his 40s, and it's like this dude still throws down. They're built different. Court McGee's built different. His problem is that his athleticism is a little bit lacking. His striking, a little bit robotic, a little bit mechanical. His wrestling, just okay. But what he can get by on is he's got heart for days, pretty good pace, pretty good cardio, and he just breaks one-dimensional grapplers. That's his path. Guys that are one-dimensional grapplers, he can break them. Because as you mentioned, knocked out one time in his career, which was against Santiago Ponzinibbio, prime Santiago Ponzinibbio. Yeah. No shame in that. But he's also never been submitted. Like, he's super durable. And so when he got initially matched up against Claudio Silva, he comes in as an underdog. I like him because he's never been submitted before. Claudio Silva's bum, one-dimensional grappler. So what does he go do? He boxes him up standing. He actually takes down Claudio Silva 3 times, stays on top of him. He's not worried about the grappling because defensively, Court McGee, very sound. Now against the Brahimaj fight. Again, underdog. What does he go do? He boxes him up. He breaks his will. Guy that's 10 years younger than him, just completely out-volumes him, outworks him. And not to boot, 5 more takedowns, right? He's putting that grind on these guys. He doesn't respect their grappling. He's okay with going on top, or with going to the ground, and just maintaining that top control and grinding away at them. So with Jeremiah Wells, I think it's much of the same. Jeremiah Wells signed to the UFC. He's coming off quick knockouts, right? Quick, 22-second knockout, quick submission in the second. Debuts against Warlley Alves, and he just went like a man on fire after him. Like, not sustainable pace, but he's on short notice. It's his debut. He's in his 30s. Why not go for it? So he does go for it. And to his credit, he ends up winning the first round against Warlley Alves and then knocking him out in the second. So impressive work. But you can tell that he's foot on the gas, pedal to the metal, going as fast as you can. And against Blood Diamond, strange fight. So, like, of course he's going to take Blood Diamond down and beat him, right? But he hurt himself early in the fight. He ends up on top. His striking looks slow. He looked plodding. He spent 4.5 minutes on top of Blood Diamond before he was able to submit him, even though he had such a discrepancy on the ground. And then he openly reveals that he had injured himself in the fight. Like, a lot of red flags that I wouldn't particularly like. So in this fight, I think he's going to come at Court McGee fast. He's probably going to throw the overhand right. If he knocks him out and becomes the second man to do so, then so be it. It's MMA. But more than not, Court McGee's got a giant beard on him, and it's protecting a pretty good beard because the guy can take a punch. If he can survive that first round, I think Wells is going to start to fatigue. Court McGee is just going to put that classic Court McGee grind on him, win the second and third round. So I got Court McGee by decision, plus 150, as you mentioned. I also think this is a great live betting opportunity. If he gets folded in the first round, well, you don't got to worry about it. If he loses the first round and is, even better plus money, or a slight favorite now, but he's good plus money going into the second, he survived that first, I do expect Wells to start to fatigue and slow down. And of course, that's when McGee generally takes over.
I get the angle with the live betting and all that, and I absolutely agree. In most matchups, that's the way to go. But I would obviously recommend people to have that pre-fight bet on Court McGee too, right? We've seen sometimes where we think that guy's going to lose the first round, we'll get that better line in the second round, and then it doesn't end up happening. You end up getting minus 250. But I agree with your method there. I absolutely agree. That is something to keep an eye on. But I would beg people, especially at this minus 120 line, make sure you get some early as well, because you might not get as good of a line going into that second one. But perfect strategy live betting wise. All right, let us move on to the prelim headliner here. We got hot prospect Adrian Yanez taking on Tony Kelley, minus 270 on Yanez, plus 230 the return on Tony Kelley. I talked about it earlier on this card, Cody. You have guys like Kyle Daukaus, and you have guys like Phil Hawes that are always like the perennial favorite in their fights. Another guy's coming up that we're going to be talking about, Kevin Holland. They're always that big favorite. But I feel like these two last guys that we're going to be talking about, they leave a little bit, more room for their opponent to make up the gap between them, right? Adrian Yanez, great boxer, right? Once he gets into his flow state, he works very well behind that jab. His movement is very good. His striking defense is very good as well. His takedown defense very much improving. Very difficult to see any tape on him getting stuck on his back unless you look way back in his LFA days. I believe he fought Miles Johns, and that was a fight where Johns was able to have some success. But here against Tony Kelley, I think he just has to worry about a guy that's solid striker in his own right. I feel like Kelley, if he wanted it his way, it would take place on the ground, but I don't think he's going to have that success. He came in with a great game plan against Randy Costa last time, just started blasting him as soon as that first bell rung, knowing that Randy Costa is a guy that eventually slows down and will eventually look for that way out. That's exactly what happened in that second round, where Tony Kelley felt that he was starting to break, starts delivering more knees to the body, and he ends up in full mount, just absolutely smashing him on top with elbows. But I think it's going to be more difficult for him to do that against a guy like Yanez here, who will be popping in with those counter shots, right? And Kelley, he was throwing a lot of wide shots, a lot of kicks, a lot of naked kicks, and I feel like Yanez could absolutely just find that counter and put him down, especially if Kelley gets too reckless. And I think that's going to start to deter Kelley the longer that this fight goes. I see all the people on the value side on Kelley. I kind of get it. Came through last time against Randy Costa, but Adrian Yanez is not Randy Costa. Like I'm not fully on board with betting the heavy chalk here on Adrian Yanez, but the guy is damn good with his boxing, and I just don't feel like Kelley is clean enough in that department to make this the fight that he needs to win it. And Yanez has great cardio to go 15 minutes if he needs to. There's no way you're going to break this guy with pressure. He's going to counter you effectively. He's going to put combinations on you. And Tony Kelley's striking defense is not the greatest either. So I like Yanez. Sorry, I will say this about Kelley. Good durability. So I do see this going the full 15 minutes. I do see Yanez outpointing him the entire time. I would much rather bet Yanez by decision, which is plus 175, than take that minus 300-ish line that he's currently at. But he should win this fight. I get the Kelley hype, but I think that people might be they may have won money on him against Randy Costa last time around, and they want to keep on this train. But I think it's going to come to a stop here against Adrian Yanez. What are your thoughts here?
Yeah, I almost kind of feel the value side on Tony Kelley, truth be told. I think a lot of Adrian Yanez is that people really like him, right? He's the flavor du jour. The UFC had put up these graphics. They said these are the top 5 boxers in the UFC, and they had Adrian Yanez ranked number 5. You know, everyone's calling him, he's bantamweight George Masvidal, and he's so slick, his counterpunching is so great. Let's keep in mind, this is a guy that he won on the Contender Series against Brady Huang, right? This is a nobody, right? But the fight before that against Kyle Estrada is a journeyman, dude. He's like 11-7, has lost to really low-level guys. Lost to a guy that was 4-5. He squeaks out a split decision against Kyle Estrada. But then because he dices some fool on the Contender Series, they love him. Then they give him Victor Rodrigues in the UFC. Well, he dices Victor Rodrigues. Okay, I can't say that that's ultra impressive, but a good win for a young fighter nonetheless. But now all of a sudden they're feeding you these 3-to-1 price tags, and they're telling you how great his boxing is, and they're comparing him to George Masvidal, this and that. And he draws Randy Costa. He loses the first round quite handedly against Randy Costa. He wasn't able to get his punches going. He spent the whole first 5 minutes defending head kicks and jabs. He did not look particularly good, but to his credit, once Randy Costa tired, which he's known to do, he was able to take over and take him out in the second round. Then he goes in the Davy Grant fight, much of the same. He's a big favorite over Davy Grant. I had him on my top ticket that night. I'm a huge Adrian Yanez supporter. I think the guy's clean, he's crisp. But what happens is Davy Grant makes it a dirty fight. Sure, he's not a better boxer, but he can make it a scrap, stay in the guy's face, unload on big punches. And that's Yanez's problem. If you come forward and you put pressure on him, he's not nearly as good as if you just stand in front of him and have a boxing match. Keep in mind that split decision win over Davy Grant represents the 4th time in his career that he's had a split decision. His fights are generally close, they're generally competitive, they're generally striking affairs. And in Texas, I think he's from Texas, so that might help him out. I am not 100% certain that he's the guy that I want to be backing as the tune of a 3-to-1 price tag. Now, Tony Kelley, it's not a sexy pick. First and foremost, I completely agree. He's 35 years old. He come from the MTV cage show back in the day, him and Matt Schnell, this and that. But him and Andrea Lee are together now. And you can see the complete transformation in the both of them, that they're coming in exceptionally good shape, better game plan, better camp. They got some money now. They're putting it behind them. They're reinvesting, and he himself looks a lot better. Now, you haven't really been given a fair shake on this guy. He fought effectively 5 times in 8 years. In 7 years, he had 5 pro fights before the UFC signed him. So there's not really a whole lot on there. You can't go back to certain fights and say, he did this, he did that. You can only really judge him on what he's done in the UFC. Now, what he's done in the UFC is that fight with Kai Kamaka. He arguably should have won. The low blow definitely set him back. But he lands 111 significant strikes, but he gets taken down 5 times. Damn, Kamaka takes him down 5 times, takes the wind out of his sail. That's why he loses. The Al-Qazi fight, right? He got taken down 5 times against Al-Qazi. Wow, he's a powerhouse. He's strong. He's rugged. He took him down. Those guys are trying to take him down. Randy Costa, not going to take him down. Randy Costa going to strike with him. He came in wicked shape. He mad dogged him. He got in his face. He pushed him back. He gave him no space, and he absolutely beat the shit out of Randy Costa the entire time. At no point, at 0 point is Randy Costa ever in that fight. He just goes out and gets shit kicked. Now, this is the same Randy Costa that was coming off a fight with Adrian Yanez in which he handedly won the first round before gassing out. So I think that style of getting in a guy's face and not giving him any room to breathe is very effective. Tony Kelley knows what he has on the line. He's 35. A win over Adrian Yanez would really skyrocket him up the divisional rankings and give him some of those bigger fights and bigger paydays. And I think that this is a guy that trains completely full-time, completely dedicated to his craft, junkyard dog mentality, never been knocked out, never been submitted. He's going to go out there and he's going to do the damn thing. I think he's going to push a pace. I think he's going to give him no space. He's going to keep it dirty. And in Texas, they're going to reward that. They're going to reward that kind of forwards pressure. Crowd goes crazy. He's from nearby Louisiana. I don't know if he'll have support in the crowd or not. But I think this ends up being a closer fight. And Adrian Yanez is not above being in these close fights. His last 2 fights didn't look great. The ones before that, very limited level of competition. Tony Kelley's not a big name, so I think that's why people are overlooking him. But I 100% agree, it is the value side. Not only that, if Tony Kelley was to spring the upset, how does he get it done? By decision. And it's like 6-1, Kelley by decision. Oh, hard to look away. So I think it might be my PRP pick. All the way at the bottom, 14 fights. To be honest, glory to Paula might be all the way at the bottom. But Tony Kelley not far off. You know what I'm saying? Like, it is at the bottom. But we got a lot of big favorites on this card, okay? Yeah. I agree with a lot of them. I like a lot of them. One of them's going to shit in the pie. Maybe 2 of them shit in the pie. I got to figure out who it is. For some reason, I get the impression that maybe it is going to be Adrian Yanez, who, of course, is overvalued because people love him.
Again, we're going to talk about another guy later on in this card who kind of follows that same narrative as well in terms of popularity with the masses, and I feel like it affects his betting line every time out. So we'll get to that very shortly. All right, that is the wrap on the prelims. Shout out to the 60 live viewers that we have banging with us on this Wednesday night on the All-Star. Shout out to the All-Star once again. If you guys haven't already, make sure you guys hit that subscribe so you know that you guys are supporting the show, and that's the best way you can do so. The other best way, make sure you guys hit that like as well, because we definitely got to get that number up, especially considering, you guys love the show. I know you guys love this show. This is one of the hottest shows on the All-Stars Network, so we're very happy that you guys are doing that for us and coming out and watching these shows. Shout out, obviously, to Bet Online as well. Link is in the description below. They'll match your initial deposit up to 50%, up to $1,000, I should say. Sorry. So make sure you guys take full advantage of that. And then shout out to Cloudbet as well. We got about 4 or 5 props that we'll talk about on the back end of the show that they made specifically for our show so that we can push it for you guys. I think you guys are going to dig it. Again, it's always fun to have different things to bet on, not just the money line, not just the total, not just a regular prop via decision prop. Why not like a Team China prop or a total takedowns on the entire card? We like messing around a little bit more places you can put your money. So stay tuned for that on the back end of the show. Let us get to the main card here, and we are starting it off with another middleweight fight. In terms of odds, we got Gregory Rodrigues here coming in at -170. He's going up against Julian Marquez, who comes in at +150. Now, Gregory Rodrigues, this line actually opened up as a pick'em. Massive money coming in on Gregory Rodrigues to start, ballooning him up to a -190 favorite. Now he's down to -170. And I'm starting to hear more and more love for Julian Marquez the later that this fight week goes on. I kind of get it. You know what I mean? The guy's a big dude, has a lot of power in his hands, and he'll fight for your money. You know, we saw it in the Maki Pitolo fight. We saw it in the Sam Alvey fight. And those are the only 2 fights he's had since he had that extended layoff after his fight with Alessio Di Carico. I believe that was in 2019. Let me get the actual date here for you guys. Sorry, 2018, July 2018. And then he took off just about 3 years, just under 3 years is when he returned and fought Maki Pitolo in that war at UFC 258. Was able to get his hand raised there with 43 seconds left with that anaconda choke, and then he rear naked choke Sam Alvey in the second round after hurting him and dropping him in that fight. But he's kind of sloppy, right? Like he has good, decent striking, but you know, a lot of it is power based. It feels like he can be taken down, as we saw in the Maki Pitolo fight. And I feel like if Gregory Rodrigues comes in with a solid game plan, a lot of it would surround around that grappling, getting him to the ground, using that famed jiu-jitsu that we don't see often. Like, he does have a handful of takedowns in his UFC career. Let me get the actual number here for you guys. I believe it's 7 takedowns in his 3 UFC fights. But it doesn't seem like that's what he normally does, right? Like, it seems like he likes throwing his leather, and his striking is definitely improving. So I understand why he has the confidence there, but I'm hoping that he takes the smart way here, especially after dropping his last fight to Armen Petrosian. If he takes this fight to the ground, I wouldn't be surprised if he locks up a submission within the first round or round and a half. But the longer that this fight goes, man, I feel like Marquez can make it very dirty, make it very gritty, and he could potentially find the chin of Gregor Rodrigues late. Now, I largely believe that Jordan Williams' knockout was an anomaly in Gregory Rodrigues' career, because we've seen him take some big shots, especially in that Armen Petrosian fight. But the guy keeps on chugging, the guy keeps on ticking, and he allows his durability to shine through. Marquez, I feel like he's that one guy that can shatter that durability if he is able to land cleanly enough, and if he can land it at the right time, which would be later in this fight as Gregory Rodrigues starts to slow down. So the spots I'm looking at is actually violence. Like, Rodrigues, the fight doesn't go to decision. It's currently sitting at -175. Like, I could see finishing opportunities tremendously on both sides. A part of me wonders the Rodrigues decision might be live as well if he just chooses to control, not let his cardio go. But I feel if he does let his cardio go here, he could find that submission. So Rodrigues submission plus 350, plus 400. Fight doesn't go to decision, -175. And then obviously on the flip side for Julian Marquez, via KO probably would be the best way to go about it. And that's currently sitting at plus 400. I'll go Rodrigues sub. Fight doesn't go to decision. What about yourself, Cody?
Yeah, well, I think it's going to be a violent fight and that's going to be entertaining, but I don't necessarily agree that it's going to finish inside the distance. Like, one thing about Julian Marquez is that he's super tough. Like, guy's super durable. So to beat him, you're really going to have to beat the crap out of him for the full 15 minutes. And we're both agreeing that Gregory Rodrigues probably wins the fight. So I don't know that he just chokes him out. Like, Marquez has spent a lot of time working specifically on his jiu-jitsu. His striking seems to have kind of fallen by the wayside. Maybe that would be Rodrigues' best path. But again, knocking him out is going to be a task. Rodrigues is also taking the fight on short notice. So I don't know if he's going to come out here and try to get things done early, or if he's going to try to conserve himself. I think the longer the fight goes, as you mentioned, probably does favor towards Julian Marquez. But Rodrigues is good enough standing, good enough on the ground, that I think he's able to control and win at least 2 of these rounds. And then he himself survive. We've seen him hurt multiple times in the past, but then that last fight against Armen Petrosian was an absolute war of attrition, which he did end up losing. But I think he showed a lot of promise in that fight, showed a lot of good spots. One thing about Marquez is, as you mentioned, after the Chirico fight, he looked like crap, lost. He took 3 years off. He had like major rotator cuff surgery, like major. Had multiple doctors tell him, you're never going to fight ever again. Had to go get this like MLB specialist. Guy only like operates on pitchers. And this guy fixes him up. He came back against Maki Pitolo. He arguably lost the first 2 rounds, but Maki gassed out, as he tends to do, and he was able to capitalize in that spot. But he didn't look good. And then the last fight was Sam Alvey, hard to gauge because, you know, a nice little win, I suppose. But Sam Alvey is who he is. But then he pulled out of the fight with Jordan Wright with an injury. He actually, he pulled out of the Jordan Wright with health issues. And then he pulled out of the Kyle Daukaus fight with injuries. I think his body's letting down on him. I think the only thing that's letting him down more than his body is probably Miley Cyrus in the DM section because, your body's not responding and neither is she, buddy. Time to let it go. So hopefully Rodrigues, just a little bit of a fresher man, can win 2 of the 3 rounds and get the job done. But in terms of props, honestly, like the prop I like the most is fight completes 2 rounds, which is even money. But the fight goes the distance at plus 150, and the Gregory Rodrigues by decision, which I think is plus 250 right now.
Plus 400, I think.
Well, if you can get it at plus 400, pull the trigger on that. I'm seeing points 250.
Plus 250, yeah, sorry.
Yeah. So
I was thinking about
Marquez points 450, which, intriguing if you think he's going to win. But if I was a Marquez guy, which I'm going to go with Rodrigues here, again, I think it takes you back to the live betting scenario. You and I both are in agreement that the longer the fight goes, Marquez might be able to grind him down. He might be able to take advantage and then open it up, find the chin, do something. But early, I think Rodrigues is just too much, man. This guy's big. He's strong. He's a physical specimen. The last thing I'll say is that you mentioned maybe if the fight hit the ground early that Rodrigues would just snatch up a submission. But to be honest, dude, his grappling is kind of not that good. Like, I don't know for sure. But the last time he submitted an opponent in MMA was Alberto de Oliveira in 2018, and that guy was 30-18. He's a UFC veteran. I know, he's actually a UFC veteran. He's been around. He's been around the block a few times, that guy. But he's light on submissions in terms of like anything lately. And then beyond that, he competed on those Fight Pass invitational grappling matches. The first one against Joe Selecki, who fights at 155 pounds, and it was a points draw. And then against Cody Steele, who fights at 170 pounds, and he ends up winning a points decision. But it didn't look like he passes a whole lot. He doesn't really fish for the submission a whole lot. He's not hyper aggressive with the submission attempts. He had Armen Petrosian in some bad spots on the ground, and Armen Petrosian isn't exactly known for his defensive, like his submission defense, and yet he thwarted off all the attacks relatively easy. So I think Julian Marquez will be okay, and I'm just hoping that Rodrigues short notice doesn't gas out and then end up losing this fight down the stretch. I hope he banks those first 2 rounds and then just able to survive.
All right, I love it. Let's move on to the next fight here. Probably the one that I'm looking forward to most on this card. 2 guys who have combined for 3 fights since 2020 over the last 2.5 years. We got Damir Ismagulov, 23-1, coming in against Guram Kutateladze, who's 12-2. In terms of odds, we got Ismagulov at minus 150, I guess we could say, and plus 130 the return on Guram Kutateladze. Now, Damir, hovering around minus 180 for most of the week, but now money coming in on Guram over the last couple of days, driving this fight closer to minus 150, like I said. Damir had a year layoff, if I'm not mistaken, before the Rafael Alves fight, or 2 years, I should say, close to 2 years. And right off the bat gets dropped. That's Rafael Alves' game. He gets on his opponents very quickly. He was able to do that against Damir, but luckily Damir survives, reverses the position, and wins back the round, arguably, by just dropping bows on him for the majority of that round after he was able to recover from getting knocked down, and then cruises to win the next 2 rounds there for the most part. Really touches him up with the striking. That's his bread and butter, right? He's very good in terms of timing his combinations, gauging his distance, counter-striking with his opponents. He really puts together great combinations, and that's usually the downfall of his opponents because they're just not able to keep up with it. And he does have some wrestling and good top control in his back pocket if he needs it. So he seems like that complete package. It's all about remaining active now, though, right? Like, we don't see him often enough, because if he was active enough, even Guram as well, if they were, these guys could easily be top 15 guys in terms of the skill set alone. Now, in this fight against Guram, the guy throws with heat and everything that he has, his kicks mainly, but the guy looks to go out there and just knock you out as quickly as he can, like he did against our guy Felipe Silva before he came to the UFC. And in the Matthias Gamrot fight, we saw him, do very good in terms of his takedown defense and getting back to his feet, and then just landing the much better and more significant strikes against Gamrot there. But I just don't think that Gamrot is on the level of Ismagulov in terms of striking, and I see a lot of openings that Ismagulov will be able to take advantage of here. There's a lot of naked kicks on the Guram Kutateladze side, and I feel like Ismagulov will just chew him up in those certain situations, and from there he should just be able to outpoint him, put the volume on him, put the numbers on him, and if he needs to, changing levels, integrating takedowns wouldn't be a bad idea either. But I think that the the power punching style of Guram is not going to pay off this time. I just think that Ismagulov is too complete for him. He had that minor slip up against Chavez, like I said, but I think he's going to be back to normal here, back to his championship self, and hopefully he can start making that run towards the 155-pound title, because I truly believe that's where he should be. He's 31 years old. Still has some time, but getting a big win over Guram here, which I think will likely come via decision. Guram, very difficult to put away. Ismagulov decision plus 125, plus 120 on certain spots. I'm seeing. Sign me up. Ismagulov is a great fighter, and I think he'll showcase it here against Guram. What about yourself?
I think Ismagulov, pound for pound, one of the best guys. Like, the problem is that he doesn't have the big KOs. He doesn't have the super sexy finishing abilities. And I compare him in many ways to Shavkat Rakhmonov. The difference being Rakhmonov finishes guys. People love him. Plus, he wears a fox hat. Who doesn't like that? But with this case, it's like Ismagulov just not the sexiest guy going. As you mentioned, he averages about a fight a year. He's fought in low-level guys like Alex Gorgies and gone to decision with them. He's fought some upper echelon guys and gone to decision with them. So it's a little bit difficult to tell exactly how good he is, because he kind of fights infrequently. But a 23-1 record is by no fluke. I think he's got a just absolute surgical jab. He fights long. He's got a good chin. You saw him get hurt by Alves and come right back. Sneaky good takedown defense, sneaky good wrestling, good cardio, good pace, high fight IQ. I think he does a lot of good decision makings in there. And, someone that I like to back. When you look at Guram Kudalits, I feel like he's almost the beneficiary of a relationship with Khamzat Chimaev and also the fight with Matus Gamrot. Like, realistically, he fought a 2-division KSW champion, 16-0, undefeated, smashed everybody in Poland, was one of the hottest UFC signings, and was a big favorite over Guram Kudalits. To go out there and win that fight was absolutely huge. But keep in mind, he wins the first round over a guy that had never fought outside of Poland before. He wins the first round, he drops him, and then after that, his volume just completely falls apart. He got outstruck in the second round. He got outstruck handedly in the third round, where he tired. He only landed like 36 significant strikes through 15 minutes in that fight. It's just he just throws power shots, that's all. Once Gamrot got comfortable, he won that fight. In fact, it's a split decision. You can argue that Gamrot should have won, but unfortunately he didn't. If it's a 5-rounder, definitely Gamrot. Kudalits just came out. He fought hard for 7.5 minutes, and then he tired. Since that fight, which was huge win, they booked him against Don Madge, and he pulled out. They rebooked him against Don Madge 4 months later. He again pulled out, a couple injuries. Now that's low-key sidelined him for almost 2 years. I'm sure he's gotten better, but the Gamrot fight he showed, he started off fast and then tired out, right? The Felipe Silva fight, first round knockout, 44 seconds. The one before that, referee stoppage, 3 minutes into the first round. He goes out, he puts pressure on guys, he finishes them early. If he doesn't, he's going to start to tire. That's going to be his downfall against Ismagulov, who fights as good in the first round as he's going in the third round. He's going to be surgical with the approach. He's going to jab his face off. He's got a 2-inch reach advantage. I think he's going to make very good use out of that. And I think that he's going to just pick him away en route to a decision. He's a decision guy, and he's taking on a real tough, durable fighter. It's just got decision written all over it. So in terms of a prop, even if Kudalits wins, like, he could drop Ismagulov. I say that because Rafael Alves did it. But that one seemed like a flash knockdown to me, if anything. So I'm kind of targeting the fight goes the distance. Of course, that's about 2-1, not quite good enough. So I think Ismagulov wins. I think Ismagulov's going to win by decision, and therefore that plus 125, I don't mind it. Again, this is a card that has a lot of these big favorites that you do like, but they might be minus 260. They might be minus 230. They're kind of higher up. I do not mind Damir Ismagulov here. And at the price about minus 160 on the money line, I feel like he could be on my third ticket, but he's going to be one of these guys that's really going to juice it up and add a whole lot of value. So my hopes and prayers is that he's going to run it to 24-1. And I do think he's a solid talent. He's just not one of these guys with a great highlight reel. Therefore, most fans are not going to get behind him. Therefore, you're going to get some decent prices on him. I believe this is one of them.
Yeah, we're not used to seeing him at this number, at this minus 150 number. Like his UFC debut against Alex Gorgies, minus 500 favorite, minus 310 favorite against Joel Alvarez next time around, minus 225 favorite against Thiago Moises, and then against Rafael Alves, minus 550 favorite there. Now you got Guram, who has a little bit of hype around him. That could be factoring into this, but I think once the fight is all said and done, we'll see that Damir probably deserved to be that minus 300 as he normally is. All right. Let us move on to the next one here. We got Joaquin Buckley going up against Albert Duraev in a middleweight scrap. In terms of odds, we got minus 240 on Duraev, plus 205 on Joaquin Buckley. Now, Duraev really gave me a heart attack in his last fight against Roman Kopylov, because that one should have been a lot easier, but Kopylov really rising to the occasion that night, nullifying the majority of the grappling success from Duraev and really putting it on the feet, to the point that Duraev's eye was almost shut. He really took a beating on that one side of his face. But luckily, Duraev's tenacity and pressure was enough for him to get the victory that night. But I know it left a sour taste in a lot of people's mouths, myself included. But after writing the tape here, man, like it's going to be very difficult for somebody to replicate what Kopylov was successful with, because he made it very difficult for Duraev to implement his grappling game plan, something that he does with ease, throughout the majority of his career. You can see it in the M1 scene. You can see it on the Contender Series, the way he pummeled that guy through the mat. He's very strong and difficult to deal with in those situations. And I thought that Buckley, maybe if Kopylov could do it, maybe Buckley could do it too. But then you start running the tape and you're like, Buckley is power hands. That's really about it. When you're getting taken down 3 times in the 3rd round against Abdulrazak Al Hassan, I think that Duraev, even if gassed, will be able to get those positions as well, and kind of just grind him through the mat there. So I'm seeing a lot of people big on the inside the distance here. I think this is going to be more so of a grind from the Duraev side. Buckley does a good job in terms of nullifying damage from his opponents, especially when they're in top position, which I think is going to make it difficult for Duraev to get the finish. But I do think that we'll see Duraev grind him out, get the decision victory here. I like the over 1.5 at minus 150. I think that's a pretty damn good line, especially with the total being set at 1.5. And Duraev to win by decision is currently plus 250. I don't mind that either. If you're liking the Buckley side, gotta believe KO plus 275. Or if Duraev's gas tank is truly god shit bad and Buckley can make him work, Buckley in round 3 plus 1400. But I think this is a Duraev fight from minute 1 to minute 15 myself. What about you? You giving Buckley more of a shot or what?
Yeah, well, we always talk about puncher's chance because it's MMA. Anybody could land that shot, but this one I think he's definitely got a legitimate puncher's chance. Like, I'm not fully sold on Duraev. Duraev's he's 30-3. He's got a disgustingly nice record, right? Those 3 losses in his career. Sorry, he's 15-3. Yeah. Sorry, why do I think he's 30? Anyways, those 3 losses are all by first round knockout, right? He doesn't have a great chin. Now, mind you, he was getting knocked out a long time ago. Like Ramazan Ameev knocked him out, which is definitely a red flag. But it's 2012, right? The fact is that back then he wasn't really known to have some great chin, and then since then he hasn't really fought any decent power punchers. He draws Roman Kopylov. Roman Kopylov is a boxer. Roman Kopylov has a very suspect gas tank, and he is most definitely not known for his takedown defense. And yet Duraev went 1 for 9 on takedowns against him. His wrestling looked shot. His grappling did not look particularly good. His gas tank did not look particularly good. And his striking looked abysmal. He got his eyes swollen shut. If you're getting hit that often and you're getting hit by Buckley, there's a good chance you could go down. That being said, with Buckley, it's like, well, what's there to even like about him? He's got the coolest KO you've ever seen in your entire life, and then not a whole lot. Like, he was losing the first round against Jordan Wright, but then he knocked him out too. Cool. But then he get knocked out by Alicio Di Chirico with a first round head kick. Really bad look. The Antonio Arroyo fight, it was a very bad first 2 rounds. Very bad first 2 rounds. Knocks him out in the 3rd. Still a bad fight. The Abdul Razak Al Hassan fight, and Al Hassan's been having very bad luck in the UFC these days. It's a close split decision. No power on display. He was wrestling him way more. He scored 5 takedowns. Like, I've never seen Buckley wrestle that much. Guy's supposed to be a power puncher. Why is he wrestling so much? You can kind of feel like he's a little bit lost. And James Krause had mentioned, you guys uncoachable. He's kicked out of every gym in the area. He's got no training partners. And I've actually seen Buckley post on social media a few times. I have no training partners. I give you $1,000 to come to my gym, get your ass beat.
Wow.
Yeah, no, he does this all the time. So I don't really know that he's putting himself in a position to get a whole lot better. And if he's only going to come in with the same old tricks, guys are going to figure him out. His last 3 fights, he has not looked good. Those guys have figured him out. If he comes in with some improvements here, great. But he's going to have to shake it up. He's going to have to do something. He's going to have to let his hands go, because Duraev otherwise is probably going to be inside the space. He might have a little bit more volume on him. Honestly, you know what? I said there was a lot of big favorites. We got to figure out which guys were going to be the apple pie shitters, this and that. To me, I just got like a bad instinctual feeling that the apple pie shitters are going. But I don't know if I got the balls to pull the trigger on it fully. But Adrian Yanez and Albert Duraev, just got a bad feeling about both of them. Maybe one of them is going to win. Maybe both of them are going to win. But I got a feeling that if I can avoid those guys for the most part, that I'm going to try to avoid the apple pie shit situation altogether. Buckley's not very good. I still think I am going to pick Duraev in the end, but not a whole lot of confidence there because I don't think he's all that good. And I think he's prone to getting caught with a big shot. And it's a bad spot to be and getting hit by a guy like Joaquin Buckley. So normally I would say stay away, but, we're in the business of making prop plays. So what can you do? I guess if you were going to take Duraev, you would take Duraev by decision and that, maybe take him down a few times and hold that position. But I don't disagree with those people that are saying violence fight doesn't go the distance. Buckley either catches him or Duraev might be able to mount some offense from the ground. And I don't really think Duraev is much of a finisher, but maybe I'm writing Kopylov off, right? Not giving him a fair shake. He's got some durability, I suppose. Not a fight I really want a whole lot of confidence in. I think the official prop that I would take, though, is just maybe fight goes the distance.
Just further proof in regards to Buckley KO. Ramazan Ameev only has 2 finishes via knockout on his record. Obviously, one of those being Albert Duraev. So
it's a bad look. It's a bad look.
Bad look for sure.
Yeah, I know. and like I hate to say it, but like the other guy he lost to is Anatoly Tokov, who's an absolute beast. But I know, absolute beast. But and it does have some knockout wins on his record, but not particularly known as a knockout puncher. He's got it shows he's got 16 KO wins, but most of them are against some lower level Russian opposition. Both these guys hit him early, first round, knock him out. So then when you watch his last fight and he got clipped early, or he gets his eyes swollen shut, but he also got knocked down against Roman Kopylov. I don't know, man. He was a minus 380 favorite over Kopylov. This was supposed to be a walk in the park. Instead, he threw low volume, went 1 for 9 on takedowns, had his eyes swollen shut, gassed out, and got knocked down. None of that was good. Now they're trying to feed you another big dog or another big favorite price tag against someone who's arguably just as dangerous. To me, it just got red flags on it. So that's why I'm trying to keep it modest.
Yeah, I'll never forget that night because that was the night that I parlayed him and Alexander Volkov as my big favorites, and they both just won those by the skin of their teeth that night. Volkov beating Marcin Tybura in a very underwhelming performance, but luckily
Dave
cashed the ticket
done 2 weeks ago.
Yes,
in his teeth. It's like, how does this happen? 7-1 favorites. It's
MMA, Cody. We know this. It's MMA. Anything can fucking happen.
Valentina last week.
Oh yeah, exactly. Jesus. All right. Let us move on to the next one. We got 3 fights left. This one should be a fun one. We got Kevin Holland, big mouth Kevin Holland, coming in at minus 280, plus 240 the return on the Dirty Bird, Tim Means. And I think this is the 4th fight, Cody, where I'm just like, it feels like hype is a lot of it in terms of why the betting line is as wide as it is. The public image of these guys, more so with Kevin Holland and Adrian Yanez than compared to Kyle Daukaus and Phil Hawes from earlier in the card. But it seems like they're always these big favorites. But Kevin Holland, he always leaves enough room for his opponents to make it close or even just let it slip away from him. Even in his last fight against Cowboy Oliveira, all 3 judges gave the first round to Cowboy Oliveira, but luckily Kevin Holland was able to get that pinpoint accuracy going, find that chin of Oliveira and put him out. But here against Tim Means, things could get a little greasy. Like we've seen Tim Means, really go to the grappling and the clinching and trying to control his opponents to try to stay away from getting knocked out, because that's always been the issue with Tim Means. He could be up in a fight, but he would catch that big bomb from his opponents and it's lights out for him. And that could absolutely be the case here with Kevin Holland, right? Kevin Holland, very long and rangy. I believe he has a 6-inch reach advantage in this fight, as well as a 2-inch height advantage. But that's usually Tim Means. Tim Means is the longer, taller, lankier guy in his fights, which is why he's able to stay safe at distance by just pitter-pattering his opponents from distance and then, doing what's necessary to close the distance without getting hit and knocked out. But it's going to be difficult to do that against Kevin Holland, especially from range. Him entering, that has me scared to death, because I could see, Kevin Holland just throwing it straight down the middle as Tim Means closes the distance and he just knocks him out. But it's not like this minus 280 is going to be winning the majority of this fight. I feel a lot of that is reliant on him getting the finish here, because I feel like Tim Means is just a much better minute winner. He can get the clinch going. He can drag this fight to the ground if he needs to. And I know there's been all this talk about Kevin Holland and him improving his takedown defense and his ability to get back to his feet, especially after that tumultuous run he went on where he lost to Derek Brunson, Marvin Vettori back to back, getting grinded out over 50 minutes, if I'm not mistaken. But, it's really just the Kyle Daukaus and the Alex Oliveira fights that we've gotten since he has claimed that he's making all these improvements with his grappling. His grappling didn't look the greatest in the Kyle Daukaus fight, but that's Kyle Daukaus. The Alex Oliveira fight, that guy's always a wild card, so we can't really put any stock in how he challenged the grappling of Kevin Holland that night. But Tim Means doesn't seem like the greatest wrestler to me. I just feel though he could maybe be the stronger guy in the clinch, push Kevin Holland up against the cage and just frustrate him up there, not leaving any room for Kevin Holland to find that knockout blow. So I believe the value is on Tim Means here. I just do not have the cojones nor the heart to trust that durability and that chin of Tim Means. So I lean Kevin Holland by knockout, which is currently plus 200. But if Means is going to win this fight via decision at plus 550, nope, at plus 425, not a bad line in my opinion, especially if you can get those Kevin Holland no scorecards is minus 300. I'll have to find the other one where it's like, Tim Means decision only, what that price line would be, because I feel like that would be sexy. But pick is going to be Holland by KO, but I feel like Means can make this a lot closer than the line indicates. Am I hyping up Tim Means too much here, or do you think that Kevin Holland cruises in this spot?
No, skill for skill, Dirty Bird's better than Kevin Holland. Like you said, he's got sneaky okay wrestling. He's got good trip takedowns. His BJJ is not terrible. His striking is just filthy, very pinpoint accurate, good volume at times. But the 38-year-old Dirty Bird, not quite himself. They've matched him up fairly light over his last number of fights. I think he's still capable of going out there and beating some guys in the division. I just don't think he's going to really crack into that upper echelon. Kevin Holland was considered an upper echelon guy at 185 pounds before everyone realized the guy can't actually wrestle. Him at 170 pounds is going to be the big difference maker. All those skills that he has, I think he's really going to translate better at welterweight. He's 6'3", I believe, but he's got an 81-inch reach. In fact, he's got a 6-inch reach advantage over Tim Means, and he's going to put it to extremely good effect. I think he's going to touch him up from the outside, beat him with the punch, use the jab. Tim Means is going to be landing counters. Tim Means is going to be staying in his face. He's going to be doing all that. But Kevin Holland can take one hell of a punch, unless it's a headbutt. He can't take headbutts too good, the guy. But I think that if we're going to go punch for punch, I'm going to trust Kevin Holland's chin a lot more. Tim Means might want to try to smother him up against the cage, but keep in mind the guys that have done that: Derek Brunson, one of the top wrestlers, a division up; Marvin Vettori, a title challenger, pretty decent enough grappler, a division up; Kyle Daukaus, a division up, BJJ black belt. That grappling match against Cody Hammer. Cody Hammer wrestled collegiately at the University of South Carolina. He's also Damian Maia's wrestling coach. Damian Maia, one of the more prolific takedown artists in UFC history. Cody Hammer is a big, strong, good wrestler, not able to take down Kevin Holland. Alex Oliveira. Alex Oliveira is a power grappler, right? He's not a guy that can do it for 15 minutes, but he's going to come at you hard for 5. So he's able to do it. These guys can't sustain it. When you look at Tim Means is not a wrestler, or he's not physically as strong as any of those guys. I don't think that's going to be the game plan. The game plan is going to be use your striking, counter this guy, make him pay. But giving up the 6-inch reach advantage, being in Texas, being in the large cage. By the way, Kevin Holland is from Texas, whereas Tim Means coming in from New Mexico. He's going to be in enemy territory. They're going to score. If it's close, it's going to get scored towards Kevin Holland. I think he's got him edged on the volume. Tim Means threw a ton against Mike Perry. That was a fight that his volume looked excellent in, but realistically, the very next fight against Nick Dalby, he did not look good, man. He lands 50 significant strikes in a takedown, looked okay, but again, I think it's against Nick Dalby. You can kind of get away with making a few mistakes here and there, mistakes that I don't think are going to be on the table against Kevin Holland. Last but not least, how do you improve this price tag? 290 Kevin Holland doesn't make sense. Money line's not good. So do you go with by decision? Well, I do think Tim Means is a little bit chinny. I think he could get caught. So do you go with that knockout? I don't know. I got like a little nagging suspicion that submission is on the table. I've said this in the past with Kevin Holland. He never submits anybody, but he is a BJJ black belt. He does have submissions in his back pocket. It's just when you look at the level of competition he's been fighting, he hasn't really been able to use it. He could have choked out Alex Oliveira had he just stopped punching him in the head and gone for a submission instead, but it was given it to him, so he took it. Here's the thing with Tim Means. Look at his last 3 submission losses, okay? We'll go 3 back. He fights Matt Brown. He comes after Matt Brown hot in the first round, landing excellent strikes, getting in his face. He's actually putting a beating on Brown for the first 2.5 minutes. And then Brown returns a favor, puts the pressure right back on him, and he just folds like a cheap tent, gives up a guillotine choke all in the first round. Next one against Cowboy Oliveira. He had fought Cowboy Oliveira once. It was a no contest due to an illegal knee. They run it back. He starts out okay. Second round, Oliveira starts to put pressure on him, melts him. I don't want to say he quits, but gives up his back and gives up a quick rear naked choke. Fair enough. That fight with Daniel Rodrigues, he came out against D-Rod hot in the first 3 minutes. Yeah. What happens? Rodrigues takes all of his best shots, returns fire, stings him, hurts him. He gives up a standing guillotine choke. What happens with Tim is that he is the dirty bird, but when it gets real dirty, not that he looks for a way out, just like he's got a very a fight style that's entertaining because he either kills you or you kill him. And unfortunately, he will give you the kill more often than not. So I think with Kevin Holland, if he can just stay in the fight long enough, 5, 7, 10 minutes, he's eventually going to clip him with something, hurt him. And at that point, being the taller guy, having that kind of reach, being a guy that doesn't mind going to the standing guillotine choke, I think he'll have an opportunity to lock something up. Could be a rear naked, could be a triangle, could be an armbar, could be a guillotine choke, could be something, preferably attack the neck. But yeah, I just got a suspicion that if I take the knockout prop, it's going to be a submission. If I take the submission, it's going to be a knockout. If I take inside the distance, it's only plus 115. It's not even really that good of a price tag. But my gut does tell me that Holland will figure out a way how to end it inside of 15 minutes.
Yeah, one of the props I was looking up here was the decision only line. And they got Tim Means at plus 165. That intrigues me because if he gets finished, then the bet is void. Pretty much is what that means. So, yeah, I don't mind that. What are the chances that Tim Means finishes Kevin Holland? I'm not sure if that happens, but for a decision only, I like that plus 165 there. All right, let us move on to the co-main event. A fight that was scheduled a couple times over the last couple months. Now they're finally getting it done, and they're getting it done in front of a crowd, which is exactly what these guys deserve. We got Donald Cowboy Cerrone coming in as a minus 155 favorite, minus 160 on certain spots, plus 140 the return on Joe Lauzon. And again, Cody, I'm very glad that this is happening in front of a crowd because at this stage of their careers, this type of experience that they've been through, the kind of names that they have, and the kind of fights that they provide whenever they step in there, good God, would have been wasted inside the Apex. But thankfully, they're going to be over there in UFC Austin, obviously down there in Texas. And I think that's going to feed them in terms of how this fight goes down. Very kind of easy fight to break down, right? Cowboy Cerrone, notoriously known as a slow starter, that's usually bites him in the ass, and Joe Lauzon likes to get going right off the bat. So this is going to be a very difficult start to the fight for Cerrone, as Lauzon knows that he has to put it on right away, similar to what he did against Jonathan Pierce, which was his last win in his home state and hometown of Boston. That was the Cinderella way to call it a career, drop the gloves in the cage and just retire at that point, being an up-and-coming prospect in your hometown as a big underdog. But nope, he's like one of those ex-Marines that just gets called back in for a new duty, for a new mission that only the old Rizzle guy can get done. And that's Joe Lauzon here against Donald Cowboy Cerrone. The spot that's going to get more or most of my money in this fight is the under 2.5. The fight doesn't go to decision. I'm expecting a finish no matter who it comes from in this spot. Obviously, I lean Cerrone late, but I do think that Lauzon is very live to get this done early. We're looking at between minus 160 and minus 185 for the under 2.5 right now. Fight doesn't go to decision, hovers anywhere between minus 200 and minus 220. But I think it's worth the juice here. I do think that we're going to see violence from either side. Joe Lauzon can absolutely get him out of there quickly. Lauzon in round 1 is plus 375. Lauzon by knockout in round 1 currently sits at plus 600. A lot of action coming in on that, as I do remember that was closer to 4 digits earlier. Yeah, it was around plus 1100. Got a lot of money coming in on it because that is definitely the way to beat Cowboy Cerrone. Get on him nice and early, and I think that's something that Lauzon is capable of. Otherwise, I think that Cerrone starts to get into his flow state, starts to beat up and batter Joe Lauzon from the outside. And we saw Lauzon, they threw in the towel in that Chris Gritzmacher fight. It does not get good, or look good for him the deeper fights go. And if Cerrone can get back into that flow state like he has in the past, get his striking going, get those combinations going, he's really going to touch up Joe Lauzon here and get him out of there. So, like I said, I lean more so Cerrone in terms of a side, but I really like the under 2.5 or fight doesn't go to decision as an actual bet. What about yourself, Cody?
Yeah, actually, the last time it was booked, I felt pretty much the same way. Donald Cerrone is a little bit sharper, a little bit longer, better striking technique, stay to the outside. He's probably just going to pick him off. Joe Lauzon would try to get that first start, that quick finish, because he's a bit of a fast starter, and of course, Donald Cerrone is a bit of a slow starter. So, yeah, it would make sense he would try to get the pounce on him, but to be honest, the theory here is that Donald Cerrone is done. Like, he's all the way done. He's shot to bits done. He's 39 years old. He's had his last hurrah. The fights have been progressively getting worse and worse. You can make arguments that, oh, well, he looked okay against Ferguson early and before he blew his nose on purpose so that the fight would end. And he got killed by Gaethje. He got killed by McGregor. He got, Anthony Pettis is no longer with the promotion, not a very good version of himself. Loses that fight. The Nico Price fight, unfortunate because of a point deduction, but and then to get knocked out by Morono, you see the steady decline, right? So at this point, the UFC's like, you should retire. Dana's been pretty adamant. Donald Cerrone's not the same guy he used to be. He's got on record saying, I don't get up for fights sometimes, and I didn't want to fight Conor McGregor, and I realized he more or less said, I'm afraid of him. I got to the ring that night, and I realized I did not actually want to fight this man, and I got knocked out in 40 seconds. Oh, well. He's been very vocal about his struggles. And so they book him versus Joe Lauzon. He shows up. He cries at the press conference about how emotional it is seeing how his kid's going to be there. Tries to make the weight. No good. UFC cancels the fight. Donald Cerrone is not healthy enough to take it. And then they never told Joe Lauzon, don't worry, we'll just rebook this. They told Joe Lauzon, it's off. Donald Cerrone's not fighting. So Donald Cerrone at this point goes to Thailand. He's shooting a movie in Thailand. Rampage Jackson's in the movie. You can check all of his social media. He's down in Thailand. Budweiser sponsored the set. It's free Budweisers on set.
Wasn't our guy doing an extra thing for them?
Ryan? He is. We're not allowed to name his name because he signed. Yeah, he's got because he's an extra in the movie, right? Yes. No, he signed some paperwork. But I can't get into that part. What I can tell you is that apparently Donald Cerrone enjoys smoking cigs and drinking beers, and Sasha Palatnikov is down there with him, so he's been getting some sessions in with Sasha Palatnikov. But like, is that really going to get you ready for like the biggest fight of your career? Biggest fight, not because he's not fighting for a title anymore. He's not fighting Conor McGregor. He's not getting paid $1 million for the fight. Biggest in the sense that this is it. You lose to Joe Lauzon, especially if you get finished early. They're not going to bring you back. He keeps saying, oh, got my magical number. I think he wants 2 more fights. Is that his whole thing? I
don't recall that.
I think he's got, I don't know if he's mixing in his Muay Thai
36 and 16. So what is that? 42, 52 fights he currently has. This is going to be his 53rd.
Yeah, I don't know what his magical number is, but he's dead set on he's going to get, he needs a couple more fights, and then he's got some number. And I don't know. I don't want to say Cowboy's chasing a payday, but he's not put himself in the best position to go out there. And this is not at 170. This is at 155. Cowboy's had trouble making 55 in the past. He's outgrown it. His frame's a lot bigger. He's been in Thailand shooting movies. He's got opportunities. He's got sponsors. He's got a life outside of cage fighting. He just does it as a hobby. But Cowboy's all about the party. A party, and I show up to the fight. Guy would go wakeboarding day of the fight. He'd go skydiving. He'd ride a bull. He'd do all this crazy stuff. He had it in his contract that he could go out and do this crazy stuff because he's an adrenaline junkie. He likes motorbiking or motorcycles. He likes dirt bikes. He likes all the gadgets, all the toys. But again, he's 39 years old now, so I think it catches up to you at some point. His body's ravished. He's got a lot of fight mileage on him. He's got a lot of injuries. His motivation is waning at times. He's lost fights to Anthony Pettis, Nate Diaz, and Conor McGregor, where he came out afterwards and said, they got in my head, and I couldn't get up for the fight and this and that. Well, I'll tell you what, Joe Lauzon's going to come at him like a junkyard dog. Boston strong. They got Calvin Kattar in the main event. They're going to go out there and try to put on that New England cartel, grit. If he gets in Cerrone's face, gets the hop on him, I think he could put him away. I think he could put him away early. So Lauzon by knockout is like plus 500. Paul Shaughnessy mentioned if you did like Lauzon, especially the Lauzon by knockout, why not chase that Lauzon by knockout in the very first round if he's going to come at him hard? A win over JSP is way more significant than anything Cerrone's done for me lately, right? And even Cerrone in the grappling. He grappled Joe Selecki on that show a few months back. He looked awful, man. Joe Selecki just took his back and choked him out in 3 minutes. How many times have you seen Joe Selecki on a guy's back in the UFC and not do shit with it? All the time, right?
Yeah.
but yet he just buzzsawed right through Cerrone like Cerrone wasn't even there. Joe Lauzon's good on the ground. He's scrappy. He's taken 3 years off. I don't think his chin's going to be an issue because of the layoff. He's got decent striking, decent power. He fights an aggressive style. I think he's got the makings of a live underdog. So I'm going to chase the live underdog, and furthermore, I'm going to chase him by knockout.
I like it. I'm glad that we're agreeing on the violence aspect here. So at least both of us will be happy if it goes our way. All right. Main event time. Fight number 14 on the docket. Shout out to the 70 live viewers that we currently have with us on this Wednesday night. Make sure you guys hit that like and subscribe. Show the All-Stars some love. Shout out to Bet Online as well for sponsoring the show. Link is in the description. Check that out. You guys can sign up and get up to a $50% match up to $1,000 on your initial deposit. They are great for regional, MMA, anything you want to bet on. There's always something to bet on with Bet Online, especially when it comes to MMA. And usually they are the first people to drop their lines as well. So make sure you guys go check them out. And then secondly, Cloudbet. We talked about them earlier on in terms of the props that they made for UFC 275. After we break down the main event here, I'll drop the other ones that they're going to have for UFC Austin. We got a couple of nice ones in there that I can't wait to hear Cody's thoughts on. But you guys can bet on all of that stuff through Cloudbet. Link is in the description below. Make sure you guys go check them out. I believe they, if I'm not mistaken, they are the first ever crypto sports book in the world. And they have a damn good reputation for it. All right, let us move on to the main event. Featherweight scrap. We got Calvin Kattar fresh off his upset victory over Giga Chikadze back in January, going up against Josh Emmett, who is, seeming like the guy that's just on the outside, waiting for his moment and waiting for his opportunity. He's on a 4-fight winning streak. He wants that shine. He wants that respect. This is the fight for him to go out there and get it. Like I said, minus 230 on Kattar, plus 195 the return on Josh Emmett. I can't recall, but I'm certain that I picked Shane Burgos to beat Josh Emmett back in June of 2020. I thought Burgos was the much better striker, and I thought he'll be able to land way more strikes there. But as we've come to know with Shane Burgos, his striking defense is God horrible. Like this guy gets hit, left, right, and center by all of his opponents. He did a good job in that first round, but then Emmett really started to land in that second round. And then in that third round, dropped him, I believe, twice in that round and just fully took over that fight. But Josh Emmett, we know he has big power in his hands. That's really about it, right? I think he has a wrestling background, if I'm not mistaken, but he just doesn't really show it off in the cage. He wants to go slow or go throw big leather and try to knock his opponents out. We saw the Michael Johnson fight where he's losing 14 minutes of that fight before he eventually gets that knockout victory. Same with the Shane Burgos fight, kind of getting touched up there, but finally starts landing the big strikes. Dan Ige, that was a close fight as well, but came down to Emmett landing his big strikes and kind of pulling away there. But with Calvin Kattar, man, much better technical striker. Gotta believe that he'll be able to use his range effectively here, telegraph the big shots that are coming his way from Josh Emmett, get out of the way of those big shots, and just really paint a masterpiece on Josh Emmett's face. I know a lot of people think that Calvin Kattar is super hittable because of the Max Holloway fight, but I think that was just that's a big anomaly there. I think that was just Max Holloway on God mode that night, because a lot of people expected him to do the same thing to Yair Rodrigues as a minus 600 favorite. It was nowhere near looking like a minus 600 favorite. I'm not sure if we'll ever see Max Holloway achieve that status that he was at in the Calvin Kattar fight. So I am picking Kattar here. I do think he is the viable favorite. I do think the line is accurate. It all comes down to Josh Emmett landing that big shot. Emmett quite durable, unless your name is Jeremy Stevens. I believe that fight put him out for a long time, where he just busted up his face with some big elbows there. But I think Kattar evades the big bombs. I think he cruises in this fight for the majority of the 25 minutes and wins this fight via decision. I am quickly pulling up on DraftKings here the decision-only line for Calvin Kattar, and that is currently sitting at it looks like DraftKings messed up on me, but that's how I would play it. I would also play him to win decision only, because I expect him to outpoint Josh Emmett for the majority of this fight with his striking from the outside. Here we go. Decision only Calvin Kattar. Minus 300. Makes sense. A finish only Josh Emmett is plus 150. So chances of Kattar getting the knockout here, I don't know. I'm not very high on it. I would much more expect Calvin Kattar to win this fight via decision, and him to win straight up by decision is plus 130. But I don't mind the chalk on him. I'm likely gonna have him in a parlay of some sort. I think he cruises here. What about you, Cody? Am I too high on Kattar here, or do you think that Josh Emmett has what it takes to find that chin?
Yeah, well, like the guy's got some nuclear power in his hands. You think he's the divisional? He might be the UFC's all-time knockdown leader. He's got 11 of them. He got a knockdown over Dan Ige, 2 over Shane Burgos, 1 over Mirsad Bektic, 1 over Michael Johnson, 1 over Jeremy Stevens, even though Stevens knocked him down way worse. 1 over Ricardo Lamas, 4 over Felipe Aranches. Like, the guy's got killer power. Yes, he does come up from a collegiate wrestling base, good athlete, but yeah, he's completed 1 takedown in like the last 4 years, last 5 fights. He's not looking to wrestle. He's just looking to line you up with those big hands and put you away. And that's all fine and well and good. But the problem with these guys with just colossal power is a lot of the times that they won't throw a whole lot of volume. They'll just wait often too long for that one big shot, and they'll let the numbers fall away from them. I think that's going to be the case here. If you look at the Dan Ige fight, he actually gets outstruck by Dan Ige on the numbers. He got outstruck in that fight. In the Shane Burgos fight, he also did get outstruck by the numbers, but of course it's the knockdowns. The knockdowns are the most meaningful thing that happens in the round. It killed me last weekend with the Choi fight, right? It's like Choi's fighting pretty decent against Josh Kulabau, but the knockdowns are going to steal the round. So as a result, you might be landing more significant strikes, but getting drops never a good thing. He's always been able to rely on that. And what he does is he puts these guys down. But you go further back, the Michael Johnson fight, he loses the first 2 rounds, as you alluded to, but he only landed 22 significant strikes into the 3rd round of that fight. Super low volume. The Jeremy Stevens fight, it's into the 2nd round. He had landed 18 significant strikes. It's low volume. He's a guy that just waits far too often. With Calvin Kattar, you're just not going to be afforded that opportunity to sit there and wait. Like, the guy's got great volume. He's going to put pace on you. He's going to be chipping away. Whereas on one hand, I say, well, geez, Josh Emmett's got 11 knockdowns. He's got huge, huge power. Well, in that same breath, this guy got hit 445 significant times by Max Holloway and never went down once. You ever seen the movie Raging Bull, Jake LaMotta, with Robert De Niro plays Jake LaMotta, and then he just gets shit kicked by Sugar Ray Robinson, and then he's like, "Never knock me down, Ray." His faces are a mess, but he never got knocked down. That was the whole thing. Never knocked me down. He didn't beat me. Calvin Kattar went through a life-changing experience, and then his return bout against Giga Chikadze, he's a 2-1 underdog. No one's got, it was the first card of the year, wasn't it? No one's got any expectations for him. It's like, oh, Giga's the man, Glory Kickboxing, Kyokushin Karate Black Belt, so rangy, going to do the same thing Max did. And it's like, Calvin looked clean, he looked crisp, he looked on point, his volume was on point, his footwork's excellent, his boxing's amongst the best in the division, his KO power is definitely coming along. He's got 5 knockdowns in the UFC, 4 of those have resulted in KOs as well. So I think everything's coming together for him. And of course, Tyson Chartier as well. I'm actually booking one of Chartier's fighters for our June 25th show. So I've been interacting with him. And I mean, just the whole team is centered around how can we get Calvin to the best that we can get him. They put in training sessions multiple times a day, every day of the week. I think they're really doing a good job. In a 5-round situation, I've not seen Emmett go into the 5 rounds, where you've seen Calvin Kattar do it and thrive in those later rounds if need be. Of course, the Max Holloway fight was an exception, but he really displayed his heart. I want to back guys that are going to fight for my dollar. I want to back guys that are not going to quit because they broke their hand. And Calvin Kattar is going to give me 100% his full effort. In terms of how the fight shakes out, I think he'll have the volume. I think he'll have the cleaner boxing technique. I think he'll start to pull away on the numbers. And whereas everybody else gets dropped, and that's what allows Emmett to steal the rounds and work his way back in, I think that Calvin Kattar will be defensively sound, that he'll either take the punch or he'll roll with the punch, stay out of harm's way if possible, and then just, let his hands do the handiwork, slowly take over, slowly start to land that volume, and especially in those championship rounds, pull away. And then luckily for me, I can put him on the top ticket because I can just hedge out. Josh Emmett's got a whole lot of power. He's a 2-1 underdog. Why not just pull the shoot if we can get that far? But I got to get the 5 other picks and at least secure us 3 top lines to make the hedge worth it.
Perfect. I love it. I'm glad that we're on the same side there because, I love Kattar, and I'm glad that this is a spot for him to go out there and remind people of how good he actually is. The Giga Chikadze performance was great, but we need another one for him to go out there and prove to some people. All right, before we get to the 3 best prop bets, let's get these Cloudbet props out of the way. So I'm going to pull them up right here for you, and we can get some thoughts from Cody as well. One of them is Calvin Kattar's significant strikes over under 122.5. What would you say, Cody?
For the first prop here, sorry, what was it? The total rounds?
Kattar significant strikes.
Oh,
over
yeah.
Under.
It's a 5-round fight. I'm going to say under. I'm going to say under because you don't want to overwhelm a guy with that much power because they're going to counter you. So if anything, he's going to jab from the outside, mind his P's and Q's, but I don't see him putting up 4 or 5 punch combinations. I don't see him racking up nearly the same amount of significant strikes he did against Giga Chikadze. So I would say under, but it's the total set pretty good, to be honest with you, 122.5.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go with the over there. I do think that we'll see Kattar start to open up later in this fight. But yeah, you don't want to overstrike, especially against a guy like Emmett, who one counter, it might be night done for you. Next here, fight of the night. Out of all the fights on the card, Cody, what do you think stands out the most?
I would say fight of the night would go to Kelley versus Yanez. I think Kelley's going to come at him like an absolute junkyard dog. Yanez is a hell of a scrapper. He's got good technical boxing. It's largely going to be a 15-minute affair. Kelley's dealt with guys taking him down. That's how you nullify him. Yanez not going to do that. Yanez, pretty much a one-dimensional striker for the most part. Kelley's going to invite that fight. You're going to have excellent 15-minute striking battle. Both guys will have their moments, high pace. And because they're 145ers, you're probably going to get a lot of combinations, a lot of footwork, a lot of speed, right? And that all just going to add to lots of action. So I would say that's my best bet. And, plus 800, not a bad price tag at all.
Exactly. I would also consider Lauzon versus Cerrone at plus 10,000. Like if it is a knockout, drag him out type of war as I expect it to be with Cerrone winning late, I could definitely see that getting the crown there as well. Total finishes, 14 total fights, over under 7.5. Where are you thinking, Cody?
I'm thinking the under, but just quickly to recap, it's 7.5, right?
Correct.
So optimistically speaking, Phil Hawes win goes the decision. Daukaus, Dolidze go to decision. Stamann's more of a decision guy. Ramos, Chavez decision. Oliveira to Paula decision. Silva, Jasudavicius probably decision. McGee's going to try to grind him for decision. Kelley, Yanez probably a decision.
It's looking
Marquez,
like the
Rodrigues, Marquez is super durable. Ishmagulov's a decision machine. Duraev, Buckley could be a finish. I think Holland fight will be a finish. I think the Lauzon fight will be a finish. I think Calvin might be able to get him out late, although I'm kind of leaning towards decision there. But in my mind, 5 or 6 would be generous, and this is set at a 7.5. So I'd be looking to hit that under.
Under 7.5 plus 104 for anybody interested there.
I'll actually like that.
And then lastly, total takedowns for the all 14 fights, over under 33.5.
33.5.
We have a lot of grappling based fighters on this card. So I understand why the line is as wide as it is. I remember one of the last ones we did, I think it was set around 24 or 22.5. But now at 33.5, I get it, right? You got who's it here? You got Tim Means who will likely look for takedowns. Duraev looking for takedowns. Ismagulov possibly. Rodrigues, Jasudavicius, maybe Court McGee later in that fight. Gloria to Paula, I could see going for takedowns. Cody Stamann, right? That's another takedown guy. Winn, Phil Hawes. Maybe they cancel each other out and we don't even get more than 1 or 2 takedowns in that fight. And then obviously Daukaus, Dolidze. Got to believe there's going to be some takedowns there. I still think 33.5 is high. So
my quick math got me to about 18, 19.
Yeah.
If you wanted to give it 5 extra ones, 6 extra ones, you're still coming well under 33.5. So I would also take the under there.
Yeah, under 33.5 is minus 118 for anybody that's interested in
that. But Duran Winn had 12 in his last fight, so I think they're hoping
against Phil Hawes though.
That's why I'm taking the under. But I think optimistically speaking, there are a few wrestlers on the card. They might be able to go rack up quick takedowns.
There you go. All right, let's get to our 3 best bets, and then we'll wrap this thing up for you guys. I'll start off as always. I'm going to start with McGee via decision plus 150. I'm already on his money line. It's not too far off from what the decision prop is. I'm still going to go with McGee via decision. Secondly, Cerrone Lauzon under 2.5, sitting around minus 160. I think that's a great spot. I think we see either Lauzon get him out there early or Cerrone starts to put it together and gets him out of there in the 2nd or 3rd round. And then lastly, I'm going to go Ismagulov via decision plus 130. Spoiler alert, it's already one of Cody's top 3 prop bets as well. I hate picking the same ones as him, but it is truly one of my favorite spots on the card, considering the disrespect that I think that Ismagulov is currently getting. He should be a bigger favorite, and I think we'll see him style on Guram Kutateladze. So Ismagulov decision plus 130. Cody, your turn, my brother.
Yeah, well, banking off the same thing. I just think he's a decision guy. He's got the jab. He's got the accuracy. Gurum's coming off a 2-year-long layoff. He's got low output. He's not built for 3 rounds. I think that Ismagulov is the rightful guy. And then that plus 130 by the only manner in which he wins fights. I mean, it just seems too much to pass up. So we're on the same page there, brother. Daukaus via decision as well, plus 155. I think that he's going to be able to get – he will probably be able to outstrike Dolidze fairly clean on the feet. I think on the ground, he's going to have his advantages. If he can get the fight to the ground, if he can end up on top, if he can make something happen, I think he's going to be live for sure. I don't think he necessarily goes and gets the finish. I do think he's going to win the rounds based on volume, positioning, actually fighting. Judges nowadays are definitely rewarding guys that are going to go out there and fight for it, put on a little bit of a pace, and Dolidze just doesn't have that. So Daukaus, and again, how should he win against this tough Georgian opponent? By decision. By the way, Ismagulov's taking on a Georgian guy. Decision. Daukaus taking on a Georgian guy. Decision. Joe Lauzon taking on a busted up cowboy. Someone taking him by knockout at plus 500. Of course, with Joe Lauzon, submissions on the table, but with Donald Cerrone, like submissions haven't really, other than, a grappling match here and there, like it hasn't really been the path. I think you overwhelmed the guy. I think you hurt him. When I watched him in the Alex Morono fight, I still had some hopes for him, but to see how much he had regressed in his game, how slow he was standing, his reflex, his timing, his ability to wear a punch, all that did not bode well for his spot here with Joe Lauzon, who again hasn't fought in a while, but I think that might have been good for him. And the difference is Joe Lauzon spent the last number of years away from the sport. He's the head coach at Lauzon MMA. He's got a few students in the UFC. He coaches every other weekend. He's staying active. He's still involved in the sport, whereas Cerrone's still active as a competitor, and he does own the BMF ranch. But for the most part, yeah, he just kind of beats to the sound of his own drum and does his own thing, and I think it's going to catch him out at some point. The line at 500 by a Lauzon KO seems very generous. If you were to chase the Lauzon by first round finish, more specifically Lauzon by first round KO, I think it's plus 1,000. Seems quite egregious, right? So it piqued my interest, and I'm willing to give it a shot.
There you guys go. 3 best prop bets for me and Cody. Also, those Cloudbet props that we were talking about. If you guys want to bet on those over, under, total rounds, takedowns, all that stuff, make sure you guys check out Cloudbet. Link is in the description below. And shout out to the All-Star for always hosting us on their channel. Make sure you guys drop comments. Let them know what you guys think about the show. And I didn't apologize about it from the beginning of the show here, but apologies for the last episode. Absolute shit show with my internet connection. Thankfully, my guy John was able to commandeer the show and just took over and pretty much did the show by himself that night. So shout out to John for doing that, and shout out to you guys for bearing with us during that time as well. But as you guys just saw over the last 2 hours, me and Cody are still here for you guys, and we'll be back at it again next week for another fight night show. I can't recall what it is off the top of my head, but very happy to be back in the saddle with my guy Cody here. Yeah. Anything else you want to say on the back end, Cody? Otherwise, I'll wrap this up.
No, that's been it. We got a PFL on Friday as well, so I'm just going to jump in the grind for that. And then I see Lil Seal wants to know my thoughts on Hugh Janus. Honestly, he's got some pretty big holes in his game, but outside of that, remains to be seen. So I'll catch you guys next time. Always a pleasure. 2 hours feels like it goes by quick, but hopefully we can make this a nice, profitable card and then move on to the next one intact with a smile on our face.
Exactly. I love you teasing that dude, making that little comment there. Anyway, love you, Cody. Appreciate you doing this as always. Shout out to all the live viewers again. Make sure you hit that live and like and subscribe on the way. God damn it, Manpreet, we're almost done. Let's get through this. Love all you guys. Good luck on your bets this weekend. We'll see you again next week. Peace out.